A night in with MauLer and the drinker, getting trashed with the web screen dinkers. A cheap night cause I'm feeling kinda thrifty, got a 10-pack of beers and a bottle of whiskey. Hop off the cork, have a glass of wine, touch they'll say I'll be fine. Trouble walking in a straight line, but pour me a Pinot Noir. It's open bar with our hosts, MauLer and the critical drinker.
Hello, that's us. That's our
Right.
cue.
It's
me.
me. Those guys, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the critical drinker. See, it's this so there.
I'm
See?
the other one.
Yeah, you're the MauLer. Anyway, well, welcome everybody for open bar number 102. No, we're well into the hundreds now, and it's glorious. It's a new century. It's a new beginning for all of us. It's a good time. It's a good time to be an open bar patron.
I'd say so.
Yeah, well, anyway, welcome everybody tonight, and I'm going to bring in a bunch of our guests this evening, and you know what? I'm not even going to do it in any particular order with particular intros or anything. I'm just going to like tumble them all into the bar. I'm just going to throw the doors open, and here they come. We got BlueCollarLoser,
Yes.
Ryan Kinel, and Little Platoon all here.
Oh,
Welcome.
hello. Yeah, you toss us in a tumbler on open bar.
I know.
Well, you know,
I'll take it.
I
Slip over each other, getting in, calling for drinks. It's a rowdy bar already.
I see the chat. Listen, the chat was complaining that we were late today. So in typical Lucasfilm Disney fashion, it's actually your fault. It's all the people in the chat. It's the fans' fault that we were late. It's not our fault at all. We could never accept responsibility for that.
Don't worry, Ryan. We'll get to that shortly. Believe that. I wanted to go.
The truth is funnier. We were talking about cocks for like 20 minutes.
we were. There was a lot
we.
to talk about there.
It was before Little Platoon got here, which is the crazy thing. I missed out on all the penises.
Well, we started talking about it, and then suddenly, wouldn't you know it, he appeared in the backstage area.
Summoned him.
So, yeah. Blue, what country are you representing tonight?
I have no idea, but I did want to tell the panel, in all seriousness, joking aside, if I do get kidnapped, I do have one way to take care of myself. You know, very handy tool.
Spotswood would be proud from Team America. Actually, that's on the subject of Independence Day, because it is in fact July the 4th today, as I'm sure our American friends have made the rest of the world very aware. Normally we do every episode of Open Bar will cover the year and the movies and the video games and stuff that were irrelevant that year. But you know what? This time around, I'm going to talk about Independence Day. I'm going to give you a couple of pointless facts about it. How does that sound?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them I'm sure will be well known, especially to the Americans here. Particularly this one, actually. Although obviously you recognize July 4th as the official Independence Day, Congress actually declared its independence from Britain on July 2nd. Also, the Declaration of Independence wasn't officially signed until a month later on August 2nd. So that's technically the real Independence Day. But, you know,
we don't talk about that.
July 4th just stuck. And weirdly, out of the 13 original colonies, the only one not to vote in favor of independence was New York. I mean, Blue, I'm just saying, man. What were you guys playing at?
Yeah, I hate this state.
Yeah, it sounds about right, to be honest. Not much has changed in hundreds of years.
No,
They abstained, but in a more modern context, at least, I pulled some stats about Independence Day. So on average, Americans are going to drink 68 million cases of beer today, which is the equivalent of 153 million gallons. And they're also going to eat 150 million hot dogs, which is equal, according to my maths, at just over 7,000 tons of hot dogs they're going to be consumed today. Now, that is actually more food than Movie Bob consumes in an entire year, which is very impressive, I would say.
I think you're going to say minute, but fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, well, come on, let's be realistic, MauLer. Also, they also like to blow things up on Independence Day. So they're going to detonate 2.3 billion fireworks today, which, according to my calculations, is going to have an explosive force equal to 33 kilotons of TNT. And just for context, that's 2 Hiroshimas getting spread over the country every year. So, well done, America.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
It's what we do. Just like gratuitous eating. We literally light our money on fire. We go buy fireworks and we fucking launch it in the air and explode it. That's how we celebrate 4th of July.
He's right.
Beer, hot dogs, and explosions. What's not to like? Also, apparently, I didn't include this in my list, but you guys also buy 150 million American flags. Usually, like the little ones that you can wave around. But I thought, like, once you've got it once, like surely you can just bring it out every year.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I'm like, guys, so half of the people in America buy a flag every year. That's a hell of a business.
Yeah.
Boy.
Anyway, well, there you go. So, well, happy Independence Day to everyone who's joining this evening from the former colonies. Let us know if you need our help on anything. We can always come back. It'll be fine. Anyway,
we'll see. I don't know if we're gonna take you up on that, but the way things are heading, you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, well, on this, we've got. Sorry, MauLer.
Did you see the? Because I feel like this will be too distant for everybody, but the guy on Twitch, I think it's Kai Cenat, who blew up his house.
I heard.
With fireworks.
Yeah,
that was fake. That was a Mr. Beast prank. They did a room specifically for that and try to tell everybody the house blew up, but it was just a stunt.
They all cleared out of there, considering they were supposed to be fighting over this thing. Like they all cleared out in remarkably quick fashion once.
I was going to say they screwed up because the way they shot it meant that you couldn't like see what happened after a few seconds of the first fireworks going off. So it's kind of a waste. You gotta.
I don't think there's any way that you really could see it with that amount of.
You got to find a way.
Pyrotechnics going off.
It's called cinematography. Okay,
find a way. Zack Snyder would have found a way because everything would be bleached out.
Because I was like, if you're gonna blow up all those, I want to see it. You know, it's like
you could just do it in slow motion. Get the first like 2 seconds would be 2 minutes. You could do that.
Have a whole bunch of cameras in there at all levels and get them all on live feeds and watch them explode on other cameras. You know, take advantage of the situation, especially if it's all rigged.
Yeah, fair play. But hey ho, it's what we do here normally. We'll talk a little bit about the world of entertainment, and well, I've certainly had lots of entertainment about how the Acolyte is failing consistently week on week. But apparently, we're the problem, according to Collider. And I think it's worth addressing this one because it's actually quite a fascinating article that they've written. I'm sure you guys are quite familiar with it by this point because it's certainly been doing the rounds on social media, but. Yeah, apparently Star Wars' biggest problem is the fans themselves. So it's kind of a lengthy one. So I'll go through the highlights here. I do like this little bullet point that they put at the beginning. Modern Star Wars projects have expanded the universe with diverse representation, but also they've had to weather the backlash in the process. The future of Star Wars should be focused on representation and inclusivity, overcoming toxic elements in the fandom. Now, call me crazy. I would have thought the future should be focused on telling good stories and fixing the gigantic, nightmarish problems that they created for themselves. I could be wrong.
You would think. This article's kind of crazy. Like the idea that, you know what Lucasfilm's biggest problem is? It's just Star Wars fans. You know what the biggest problem for a barber is? People that need to get their hair cut. The biggest problem at a restaurant is the hungry people that walk in. Like that's the same type of illogical bullshit that those statements would be. And you're right. This whole thing, not only in the middle, they're blaming the demographics of the original trilogy on the fact that there wasn't more representation in the OT on why Star Wars fans are toxic now. Somehow it always, for Disney Star Wars defenders, it always comes back to pointing out problems with the original trilogy somehow.
Well, they cover this a little bit. They certainly say here, for decades, viewers have been relentlessly attacking Star Wars performers and creators, with the renewed push against TV shows like The Acolyte demonstrating the venom with which a particular set of audience members scrutinize everyone's favorite galaxy. The vitriol of these persistent voices has subsequently spread throughout the internet, making it impossible to say anything positive about Star Wars without turning every discussion into a heated debate. It's a crazy concept, right? But fans like to passionately argue about things. And if you start claiming that something that they think is shit is actually amazing, they're probably going to push back against you. I know, it's crazy. It is, but bear with me on this one. And this kind of debate is what has been the defining factor with any fandom of anything, because you've got a bunch of people who actually care about things. And it's the attitude here seems to be, why can't you just accept the slop that you're dished up? Why can't you just praise it and consume this product? Why do you have to like argue against us? You know, and I think it's fine if you want to be one of those interesting people who really likes Disney Star Wars projects. Cool, but you're probably going to have to justify why you like it because you're not in the majority.
Well,
and that becomes a problem.
Even the first line of the article, once you get past those bullet points, the first line in the article is retarded. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Quote, the internet has never made it easy for people to speak their minds, period.
What?
The internet literally gave everybody the opportunity to speak their mind and have it be seen by more people than it could ever possibly hope. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not other people that are also speaking their mind that might reply, they might agree, they might disagree. But that entire premise, it comes from this hug box where these people just want to put out their opinion and have it echoed back to them regardless of anything else. And if you go do anything other than follow their narrative, you're part of the problem.
But if we can't speak our minds on the internet, then how are we abusing them all? That's my first question. Surely they've noticed the abuse of all of us speaking our minds, so the internet must have made that quite easy. I thought that was the problem. Yeah, it's just dumb. They don't really give a damn about the thing they're trying to create. The Collider article goes on, as I think you said in the bullet point, to say that the future for Star Wars has to, re-emphasize and recommit to all of these values that have nothing at all to do with the stories we're telling or the characters we're creating or anything like that, because we have to overcome toxic elements in the fandom, as though that's the problem. That's not the problem. Fans were absolutely fine for years, decades even, with a very diverse, expanded universe. People really liked the Clone Wars for some reason, and that's quite diverse. People really liked Ahsoka Tano. She's a diverse character. I mean, she's got like orange skin and head tails and everything.
Tentacles, yeah.
Like, she's got everything. No one has a problem with this, even if they're actually quite average and even not brilliant stories. But what we kind of draw the line at is terrible stories that cost loads of money, and then people telling us afterwards that we're racist bigots for not liking them. These people can go to hell.
Well, what's interesting is the retardation actually increases the further you get through the article, because and the gaslighting as well, because they wheel out the inevitable, the unacceptable abuse of Star Wars prequel actors like Ahmed Best received from fans in the late 90s and early 2000s has been well documented. Did he fuck? He received abuse from people like you, Collider, the media. They're the ones who relentlessly mocked him, and they're the ones who drove him to distraction and to contemplate the worst possible outcome because of people like you. It wasn't the fans. Yeah, they mocked Jar Jar Binks as a character, but they didn't single out the actor for this. So, yeah, wonderful bit of gaslighting there. This is...
And the real gaslighting is Ahmed Best is on the record talking about the abuse he received and talking about how he almost killed himself, but it wasn't because of fans. It was because of the media. It was because the media's attacks on his character. Like the idea that they always try to pin these things on fans is insane. The same thing with Jake Lloyd, the same thing with Kelly Marie Tran, like all of this shit.
It's an insane narrative they draw. They're like that guy, the meme from Always Sunny, right? The Pepe Silva thing. Where they're like, you see, they abused Kelly Marie Tran, they abused little Anakin and Jar Jar. They've been doing this forever. And you sort of sit there sometimes and be like, how old do you think I am? How much access do you think I have to these people? Like, what the fuck is going on? Why are we always the ones responsible for every horrible thing that ever happens to anybody? Especially when I have never in my whole life ever thought being mean to an actor would ever make a thing better. It's not going to do shit.
Yeah.
I mean, being mean to Mark Ruffalo makes me feel better.
Yeah, but that's not who he is or a performance.
That's got nothing to do with making Marvel better.
That's him choosing to be an absolute cock, which is a whole different situation.
And there are always going to be people that do associate these people with the characters. Take is it Fabian Franco? Is that his name? The actor who plays Kristen Cole on House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
He had to limit his comment section after. I don't know if it was after the first or second episode when people like, you're a fucking awful person. Kristen Cole is terrible. You know what I mean? And that show, in large part, it's not there's not backlash to the show. For the most part, it's very positive, but people see him as a villain of the show and are going to his Instagram and calling Kristen Cole out.
Did you see the actor who plays Erectus or whatever from Furiosa.
Oh
He-
god, yeah.
He gets a Facebook post saying, "I play a character in that movie. I didn't actually do the things he does." And it's
Yeah.
like, wait, what? You have to explain that to people?
A lot of people are retarded. What can we say?
Yeah, MauLer. Yeah.
Yeah, it does go on as well. This is kind of an interesting one. Leslie Headland's groundbreaking series has been relentlessly review bombed online, of course, because people aren't allowed to have negative opinions of it, causing the Acolyte to possess a huge disparity between its positive critical reception and abysmal audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, could it be, I'm just going to spitball here, that maybe the critics that gave it such wildly positive reviews are just shameless fucking shills who are bought and paid for, and like the audience score is the more representative of how actual, real, normal people feel about it? It's a crazy idea, I know.
I mean, I don't understand how anyone can see episode 6 in particular and say, yes, this is a really good show that's worth my time. Like they're obviously lying. And people who are not paid up to obviously lie to people in comment sections are the ones who are saying, no, actually the show is pretty garbage. Thank you. And we're just telling you as it is.
Yeah. I do love as well, because they inevitably have to go back to the original trilogy and point out that it's not diverse enough for them. They say here, it was a time when Hollywood relied almost exclusively on traditional tropes to tell stories through a Eurocentric, what the fuck? White male lens. Protagonists were almost always played as ultra-masculine tough guys. You know, that famous ultra-masculine tough guy, Luke Skywalker. Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
I recorded a video about this. I said the exact same thing because it's like you could never possibly in your life describe Luke Skywalker as an ultra-masculine tough guy. And but there's nothing wrong with the way Luke Skywalker is depicted. But to toss that out there when you're talking about like the hero of Star Wars is crazy.
Also,
Luke
Lando
Skywalker-
Calrissian didn't exist in the original trilogy, so just forget him.
Yeah.
Is there any differentiation between ultra masculine tough guy Arnold Schwarzenegger and ultra masculine tough guy Luke Skywalker? Because I think there's
None
a bit
of
of a
it.
gap.
Well, plus
Yeah, honestly, we should have had John Matrix versus Luke Skywalker in my celebrity deathmatch thing. It would have been
plus the
interesting.
trilogy. Who was voicing Vader? I forgot. James Earl Jones, not.
But it says here, supporting casts typically consisted of domestic female characters or problematic stereotypes. Yeah, sure, okay. And as films released during this insulated time period, the Star Wars movies are often construed possessing a similarly narrow narrative focus. It says here, it features a mostly white male cast. Female characters were with largely unrealized potential. Really? Princess Leia had unrealized potential.
Mon Mothma.
I mean, she seemed pretty important. But here we get to the crux of the matter. No LGBTQ plus storylines depicted on screen. I mean, for shame. How did cinema exist without storylines like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Genuinely don't know.
Rancor Keeper, the fat guy cried when the Rancor died. That is a queer relationship if I've ever seen one before. It's definitely that's.
And didn't they
diverse.
say R2-D2's a lesbian? So if that's true,
R2's a lesbian. C-3PO is gay. There was a couple of others as well that got thrown into the mix.
I mean, Salacious Crumb is probably a little LGBT guy, I guess.
I think Salacious Crumb is definitely pansexual. He will fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it says as well, while powerful female leaders like Mon Mothma and Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia are outspoken forces for good in the trilogy, and of course it's never enough, the latter's relationship with the Force and her father is glossed over in favor of her brother because, he's the main character of the movie. And Leia's infamous bikini scene at Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi feels like fodder for a generation of male fantasies. I mean, I'd like to make 2 points regarding that. One, Carrie Fisher was really fucking hot, so why not do that? And two, she specifically complained to George Lucas about her clothing in the previous 2 movies being really shapeless and unflattering and covering her up. And he did this to almost placate her. So draw your own conclusions there. She seemed pretty happy with it.
Yeah, Carrie Fisher's like, I've been doing lines of cocaine off Harrison Ford's dick for 6 months to get my body ready for this. And you're telling me you're going to put me in another shapeless gown? Bullshit. That's basically what happened, I believe, from the set of Return of the Jedi.
And boy, it paid off, though.
Yeah, all this stuff, right, is just an example of how it's never going to be enough for writers like this. There's always got to be more. There's always got to be another step that they have to take. And, you know, perhaps the reason the original trilogy did so well is, one, it told a timeless story that everyone could relate to. Two, it was well written, well cast, and generally well directed. And three, it favored great storytelling and universal themes over things like modern day representation and the pushing in of present day political agendas. I mean, it's a crazy concept, I know, but this is how we used to make movies. And it worked quite well for probably 50, 60 years. I think it did okay. So I don't know, man. We can compare the success of those films to the success of Star Wars under Disney and just see who came out better, I suppose.
Yeah, Drinker, even the prequels, everyone knows that they had problems, but you still feel like Lucas was telling a story and you weren't being preached to. They have issues, but none of the prequels bombed at the box office neither. They all were pretty successful.
Yeah.
But it's annoying when they complain about, say, like the Leia bikini scene, as though it's fodder for a generation of a particular kind of fan. Well, yes, it was, for understandable reasons, because most of the fan base happens to be male, no one actually set out to make it that way. That's just how it naturally skewed. And men generally like to see attractive women in bikinis, but they don't seem to have a problem attempting to do the same thing for what they want their new audience to be in The Acolyte, for example, because you've had Yord getting his shirt off, and Smilo Ren's principal come to the dark side and join me appeal is apparently have a look at my dick. And like that's all fine, but are we complaining generally about sexualization, or is it just when women are being sexualized that's not fine? But sexualizing men is absolutely fine.
It's interesting you should mention that, because there is an interesting article from Salon.com, you know, those purveyors of fantastic takes on media, saying that exact same thing. So The Acolyte proved what female fans knew all along: the powerful sex appeal of the dark side. The unveiling of a new Sith Lord is another example of the franchise at its best when told through the female gaze. That is an actual thing that Salon.com wrote. So you literally, the thing that you were mocking there is straight up their take. Now, the male gaze is bad. Appealing to your broadly male fan base is wrong. But appealing to a non-existent theoretical fan base with a female gaze is great. And that's what you should do. So
that is
equality.
like
Don't you love it?
That is like a thing for fucking women in general. One of the reasons so many of these like fanfic stories involve just like an evil piece of shit, a type of enemies to lovers situation. And a lot of those are written by women. There was one that was written by Ryan Johnson, which is close enough, I suppose. But there are 100% echoes of Kylo Ren and Rey's relationship in what we're seeing on screen with Chimere and Osha.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
It's happening almost as fast, too. Like with like no real given reason. You just witness this person do horrific shit, and you're all of a sudden ready to fuck him.
I can't believe I'm saying this, though, but at least the sequels sort of gave us a bit of a lead-in, because they'd been forced Skyping each other over the course of 2 movies until that point. It still made no sense, but there was something there. They hadn't just met for the first time and decided, yes, let's bone. That's what The Acolyte's called. But The Acolyte is, there's no character work to support it. So I don't mind it as a trope, a narrative trope. You can do it interestingly, but I'd like it to involve 2 characters, not just 2 random people they've thrown on screen because that's the time.
Also, the fact that he's murdered like one of her close friends right in front of her eyes, and another young woman who she was coming to probably have a fucking gay romance for, I guess, according to the actress. She got killed as well. Like, she got triple lightsaber stabbed in front of her. So even she can't walk that one off. This is what she's apparently going to forgive because she's got the hots for this guy? Really? Is that how the female mind works? Someone clue me in on this one.
The dialogue was especially terrible, right? Because they know they have to deal with that before we can even begin to get these 2 doing whatever the hell they're going to be doing. And so she's like, you kill people. And he's like, all right, well, the Jedi want me dead, so I'm killing them ahead of time, which is not a great argument, but fine. Well, you know what? We'll just, for the sake of this argument, accept it. Like, okay. She's like, but what about Yord? And then he's like, he arrested you, you know. You know, and he did that. That was mean of him. And it's just like, where do I even begin with what the fuck? Like,
yeah, because she's like, what about young Padawan girl? And he's just like, well, where do you think that relationship would have gone? It would have been one-sided or something. Like, that's it? That's your justification for fucking murdering her?
Well,
really?
the writer's
love you
brain
deep
literally
enough.
fucking melted as they were making that. Like, when they were scripting that, they were like, so he starts out with saying, the Jedi wouldn't get me, so I got them. The second argument is, he arrested you for a crime you didn't even commit, but it was, to be fair, all the evidence pointed to her, and then he released her the second that they found that she was innocent through, like, a fair investigation. So, you're like, he deserves to die for that? And then third, well... oh well. Like the third one, he literally just gives up. He's like, yeah, I fucking killed her, whatever.
It's like, well, she had a really stupid hairstyle.
And it's so frustrating because there are things they like briefly touch on an element where if they went deeper, it could be interesting. Like it could be interesting from this perspective of somebody who feels like they're capable of like giving off so much love and loving people this way, and to have it always pushed back and never accepted or never embraced. Like there are levels that you could get to where one, people in the audience could have like an understanding of how that feels, and two, it could really start to define and dig into the differences between the Jedi and the Sith and embracing your passions, like all these other things. But as soon as they get close enough to do anything about it, it's gone. The moment is gone. Somebody walks away or the scene cuts to black or whatever.
Well, the power goes out.
Yeah, that is one of the most it's such a cheap writing trick, and they do it all the time in this episode. A character is about to say something actually important that will move the plot forward or tell us something that we didn't know before, and then boom, there'll be an interruption of some kind. And then once that thing is resolved, they're just like, I'm not in the mood anymore. I'm just not feeling it. I'm going to go off and do something else. Like, oh, okay, cool. So that whole thing's going to get unresolved until the script decides it's okay for us to do this. This is just a cheap way of spinning out a really simple story into like 8 episodes. There's nowhere near enough material for that.
The slower it gets as well, the more it feels like it's been written with the presumption that they have a season 2. And I think Headland has said that she had originally planned for Smilo's reveal to be a season 2 thing, not a season 1 thing.
Wow.
Because it's not an excuse for wasting so much time, because, you know, episodes 4 and 6 have been just filler nonsense. But even so, like the longer it takes to get there, the more I can see us getting to the end of episode 8, and it'll be like, cliffhanger. Aren't you looking forward to seeing what all the answers to all of these mysteries are? Because we haven't actually bothered answering any of them. Instead, we've just had a walking simulator and a talking simulator for 2 episodes.
True.
I think the funny thing about it is that the only things we really care about are not what we should care about for a show like this. We should be caring a lot about May and Osha. They are the lead characters of this series. Yeah. But nobody gives a fuck about them. We're all worried about ancillary stuff like, oh, I wonder who the actual Sith Master is. I wonder how he got those scars. Like those are the things we're theorizing and talking about. We're not talking about the main characters because, quite frankly, no one gives a shit.
There's nothing to talk about. It's like, they're not characters. Like they don't have any definable personalities. There's really not much to grapple with in terms of what they want and who they are, and they're played by an apathetic actor in Amandla Stenberg who just conveys nothing in her scenes. So I'm just bored every time I see her on screen.
And at least with the way they drive it forward as well. I think there are 14 separate occasions in which May switches motivations for no discernible reason, and that most of them are mutually contradictory. So like, there's no character there. There's about 14 different characters, and they couldn't decide which one to run with. Osha's different. Osha isn't a character because they haven't even started trying to work out who she is and what she wants, which is why whenever they have to move the scene along, they tend to knock her out so she can wake up later, having been taken somewhere when she has no like actual incentive to go there. She doesn't drive the story. None of her decisions matter. She just gets knocked out and then wakes up, and then we're somewhere else. Then she gets knocked out, wakes up, and we're somewhere else. And that's what you do if you have no idea why your character would want to be anywhere. You just make them unconscious and drag them from scene to scene. It's not how protagonists are written, but she is supposed to be the protagonist.
Yeah.
Theoretically, yeah. I mean,
it's happened more times than you can count for each of them to wake up and like shocked and like have to gather their surroundings and everything. It happens all the time. Episode 5 started off with that, with her being knocked out from Smilo and like waking up in a start. Episode 6 started the exact same fucking way.
Yeah.
God, you're right.
Don't they do the same camera angles as well, where it's like horizontal, like matching her position, and then when she sits up, it tracks her, so like the world kind of seems to move around her. I'm sure they've done that like multiple times as well.
When we first met Osha, she woke up that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
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 It's
And then she got knocked out on the prison thing when they were crashing.
woke up again,
She woke
yeah.
up with a start.
God,
That's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
she-
Like it happens all the time.
she must have some kind of severe brain damage by this point with all like the concussions and getting knocked out constantly.
Well, she did read the script, so
You know what's funny is after 6 episodes, what's the bad guy's name?
Chimere.
Chimera, yeah.
Because
But
even
I mean,
the
that's a bit of a stretch. Everyone just knows him as Smilo Ren.
because even the
Probably a
captions
fake name.
because even the captions say the stranger. I was watching it. They talk
That's
about-
what they're trying to like promote him as, the
Yeah.
stranger. That's what all like the merchandise is being sold as and everything.
Isn't that a masturbation move where you sit on your hand for a while until you can't feel it and then off you go?
I've never masturbated in my life. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Fair enough. Moving on.
God, I hate you, Ryan.
I will say, like, the actor who plays him, Manny Jacinto, is it? Like, he's actually pretty good at what he does. This is the frustrating thing. There are a few good actors here doing their very best with some really terrible material. And I could see in a different reality with a good script, this show could be great with them. Like, they would be fantastic additions. He would make for a really interesting, charismatic villain. But man, he's got so little to work with here.
Yeah, the poor guy who plays Saul. Like you said, he had to learn English for this role. That guy is trying his ass off with the shit material they're giving him.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple moments, when he was reporting in that his whole team had died, where his like lip is quivering and everything. And it's like he is doing his damnedest to act, but he's not given a ton to work with.
And it was easier to like as well before they'd started destroying his character, which they've now very firmly started doing. So like, I'm losing sympathy even for him now, because at least back when like episode 1, episode 2, he seemed like a nice guy and the actor was doing really, really well. And the character seemed like someone I could kind of get on with. But now he's basically let his Padawan die for no reason. He's definitely probably complicit in a genocide of some sort. And he's going to have a heel turn at some point in the next episode, maybe in a flashback or something. And then he'll just be a dick like everybody else. No one to like.
Yeah,
I very much hate it in shows like this, because at least with Fallout, it was all out, so I could just go find out what the motivations of everyone was. True. But this, like, I know that whatever they tell us about Soul is going to destroy everything for the whole of the season. But I got to wait weeks. I can't I can't properly explain what I believe is completely wrong about everything he's done yet. I have to wait. Like the whole. I'm going to call it in. Oh, your communications are frazzly. I'm going to call it in. Oh, your power went down. Oh, power goes back up. But that's when he figures out May is May, or that's when the fucking Goober tells him. And so he's like,
which
right, I'm
one
out.
is it?
Don't know. But the point, of course, is that meant that he just, by the nick of time, couldn't get all of that very crucial information to the Jedi, and simultaneously leaves a split second before they arrive in almost the exact same place. In the outer rim.
This is something like I need clarification on this, right? So the communications array was on the fritz, and so he was only able to get a little bit of his message through to Jedi headquarters.
Which
was that because anyone had sabotaged it? Had May done it? Or had Basil done it?
It doesn't look like it.
So it was just really fucking convenient that it happened.
Yeah.
Like at least if May's doing it, it's still a little whatever, but it's like, okay, she's trying to prevent him from doing this, but also why wouldn't she just kill him? I don't know why May hasn't killed Saul.
Oh my god, the amount of fucking time she has changed her mode of operation. She decided not to, and then she decided to, and she was in the ship. What the fuck?
I don't understand this, because in the previous episode, she had an opportunity to kill him when he was just getting up off the ground. She comes in pretending to be Osha. Okay, fine. She goes off with him. Fine. You presumably want to get information of some kind out of him before you kill him. That perhaps makes sense. That's why you're impersonating Osha. Then she gets on the ship. She gets a knife. She heads up to the cockpit to kill him. Why? You could have killed him on the planet right there and then left if that's all you wanted to do. So why are you heading up there now as if you're going to murder him?
She could have completed the task too. She stun gunned him, and then she could have broken his neck and been like, I did it without a weapon. Yay, look at me go.
Yay, me. Yeah.
Just like my boss taught me.
It's absurd. Wow. And then, the power goes out. Is that Basil that did that? I assume he did that so that someone would have to go down to the maintenance bay to.
That makes no sense. Power? Why would he do that? Why would.
Why would he dance around for 10 seconds showing how strong he is before attempting to gnaw her knee off?
Nothing fucking makes sense here. That whole sequence was so excruciatingly, cringe-inducingly awful.
Do you know, I heard Shad came up with a theory. He said that he thought that, is it possible that Sol was the one that sabotaged the communications on purpose in order to get May to try and say more things before he was gonna. And I was just like, everyone's trying to come up with an explanation.
It makes just as much sense as anything else.
It's good. You got nothing to work with.
And it almost makes more sense because the idea that Sol wouldn't immediately know who that fucking is wild.
Yeah.
It's
well,
insane.
and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Like, a lot of people concluded he knew the whole time, was fucking with it. I got the impression it was the Goober that told him.
Exactly. I agree.
Well, when he stuns May and she falls to the ground, like the fucking Basil is right behind him. Like, they wouldn't have shown him being there unless he'd somehow conveyed a message to Saul. But then I don't know how he was able to do that because he can't speak Saul's language and Saul can't understand him.
They actually set that up in episode 4 when Yord says, well, he's the only one who learned to speak Beaver because it's more sophisticated than speaking Wookiee, for fucking hell. I thought they were going to use that somehow. And then I also thought they were going to use, because Osha has the tattoo on her arm that Sol calls out in episode 2. And I thought, well, that might be a way that he figures it out. Because, you've put these things in your script. It would make sense if you used some of them, but no. Fuck it all.
It's so wildly retarded to have a member of your team who literally only one person can communicate with. And if that person's not there at the time or gets killed or whatever, that's it. Basil can't talk to anyone. There's no droid that can translate for him, apparently. He can't just type into a keypad or something like the message.
Even though
he wants to
Jackie has
say.
a translator, which he uses in 4, and then he doesn't have that. But then it turns out you don't even need Basil to guide you because the green woman can walk into the forest anyway, and she doesn't have a fucking guide. So why is the Beaver even there?
And
he can speak to the droid, though, right? Basil?
He can speak to the Pip droid?
Yes.
So if Basil can speak to the droid and Osha can speak to the droid, then
Osha's but in this instance, Osha's not there, so Basil's faced with the problem that he needs to warn Saul about the infiltrator.
I'm just saying that,
in general,
there's ways around all of this that they're all too stupid to make use of.
And the only reason that they needed Basil was because for some reason the plot required them to get this what they thought would be cute furry little animal, because that's the only way they could find Kelnaka, because they happened to have a scrap of his clothing, even though he hadn't been seen by anybody in years. But they have a scrap of the Wookiee's clothing there.
Why do Wookiees wear clothes anyway?
Well, he actually doesn't. In the final scene of episode 2, he's not wearing clothes. And at some point between episode 2 and episode 4, they remembered he probably should be wearing clothes, so they put him back on again.
He would be wearing Jedi robes
before killing him.
Like, if he was out doing whatever, he would be wearing Jedi robes. But still, it's dumb. It was just hanging out. He's hanging dong back at his hut. No one's coming in there to get his grass stew. But the point you said about them leaving. What? I don't even know where Sol is going. I don't know.
No, I don't either.
I don't know where he's going, where he jumped to hyperspace to. I'm not sure.
It's going to be Brendok, isn't it?
I guess maybe he could be going back to Brendok to where it all started. Maybe the mothers are still hanging out there or something. Maybe they're all alive. That'll get revealed. But the idea, and this has happened multiple times in this series, where it takes no time at all to get anywhere. Think about this. They called in before the comms failure, which took about 5 minutes to reset. Before the comms failure, they called in the Jedi. Mog was on the other end of the phone. Mog, the Padawan, delivers that message to Vernestra. They get together a strike team. Hey, we're going to take off in 20 minutes, blah, blah, blah. They get in. It's in the outer rim. So they're telling you it's in the outer edge of the galaxy. Coruscant is in the core. You're talking about something that should take days, if not a week, to get there. They get there probably in the time it takes the power to go down and then for them to recycle it, maybe 30 or 45 minutes, maybe an hour max. That's the amount of time that it took from them to get to Coruscant to there. It was instantaneous. It's nonsense. You couldn't have had another scene in there that just shows us maybe some fucking time passed before the Jedi were able to get there, but no. Why would you even use a holocom? Why, if it takes 30 minutes to get somewhere, why would you even bother using a holocom to communicate?
Even if they had that scene, though, they would have forgotten the ordering that they put things in, because that happens a lot as well. So, end of episode 5, Squid Game and May get back to the ship, and the beginning of episode 6, they've actually not left yet. But in the time it's taken them to walk on board their ship, the others have spent 3 hours walking out of the forest back to their ship and then hyperspace all the way over to unknown planet, where the hell that turns out to be. Which I think the same thing happened in episode 2 as well, where they're still on the planet and they really should have left because events everywhere else are already proceeding. They have no concept of time. It just, you can't really string any kind of tension in a show which doesn't do time at all.
You know, to Ryan's credit, when you said you're not sure where Soul is going to, I don't think the writers know where Soul is going to.
They probably didn't when they wrote that scene, but
We'll find out.
Yeah. This is the problem that I picked out in my review of this episode as well. I don't get a feeling of a show that's gathering pace as it's hurtling towards its climax. It just feels like more stuff going on, and I've got no sense of like stakes or who's in danger, who I should be invested in. It's just all more boring stuff that's going on. This is the problem with the show. I don't really get a sense of anything that's at stake with this.
We've got 2 episodes left, and one of them is probably going to be a decent amount of a flashback, we expect. You know, that's what all of us are theorizing anyway. So it does not feel like we only have 2 episodes left of this series.
I'm presuming that the lightsaber whip was responsible for the scars on Smilo Ren's back.
It feels like you were supposed to get that idea, whether it's true or not, or whether it's a red herring, or like.
We'll say,
Go ahead.
how does that even happen? Like, you is that deliberate? Like, I'm gonna hurt you, but not kill you with my lightsaber whip. So, you know what I mean? Like,
if you're really savvy with how
really
you use
fucking
it,
careful, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like too much, and like you've just killed someone. But the whole concept, I know it's a thing apparently that it's been established already. Lightsaber whips do exist, so fine, I can accept that. I still think they're retarded though, and I have no idea how they would interact with an actual rigid lightsaber. Like if you whipped that, would it just wrap around it so you could like pull it out of someone's hand, or what?
So
Yeah, I can see them doing that. It'll be like the Indiana Jones maneuver.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like one of the problems is not a lot of people use light whips in general because they're just as dangerous to the person wielding it as they are to everybody else or your allies potentially. So you got to be an extreme expert to be able to use it, first of all. But also for the ones without any material on it, it's true. Like they can't go toe to toe with a lightsaber because it's too floppy. It's not, there's no rigidity to it at all.
Yeah.
Whereas something they did later on, people that then when they increasingly developed light whip, what they did, they actually had a fucking whip. Now it was made of a flexible metal that would energize, and essentially lightsaber light would coalesce around it, but there was still actual mass to it. And if you do get proficient in using it, you can keep people at a distance. It's almost impossible to get inside their guard. Luke Skywalker had developed a different fighting style. Ironically, using his normal lightsaber and a shorter lightsaber called a Shoto, which we kind of got to look at that. Maybe that's why Manny Jacinto's character had a Shoto lightsaber like that. So there are techniques that you can use to counter it. But one of the problems is that it has to always be in motion. You can't ever just let it sit there. If you're on a ship or if you're anywhere that matters, it's just going to burn right through the hull. It's going to burn through the ground. Like, so it's a very fucking dangerous weapon that almost no one uses.
Yeah, and like trying to use it on a crowded battlefield where you have friends and enemies all around you. Like, yeah, the collateral damage, you're going to fucking kill everyone in your vicinity if you try and use this thing. It just kind of feels like, okay, you want to fight up close, you're going to use a lightsaber. With this, it's like, oh, I want to use a lightsaber at range. Well, then don't you just want a blaster?
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's trying to solve a problem that doesn't really exist.
Yeah. And the ones that don't have any material, like there's no, that doesn't make any sense because there's no mass, right? It's a fucking beam of light. So and Vernestra specifically has a lightsaber that has 2 phases that can be a normal lightsaber or a lightsaber whip, which they didn't get into in this episode. But yeah, that idea is stupid, which is why even though I don't like the idea of a lightsaber whip in general, the ones that actually have mass, I think make a lot more sense because it's kind of one of the things you need for a whip.
Hey Ryan, doesn't like the whip come from the EU in the Legends universe, the extended universe?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was explaining.
Okay,
exactly. Like
Lumia
is the one who we've probably seen the most with a light whip, and hers actually it's an actual fucking like, whip that's coiled around that she has on her. That if you take it out, if you don't energize it, you could just use it as a normal fucking whip that just happens to have kind of like Mandalorian Beskar armor kind of woven into it. You know what I mean?
That's why I left, because this came from the EU, and according to Kathleen Kennedy, the EU doesn't exist.
Well,
Yeah.
they certainly
keep
take every
stealing things
opportunity they
back.
can to bastardize it.
Yeah.
It's a strange situation, isn't it? Where it's like they've decanonized the EU, but they like to pick and choose things from it that solve scriptwriting problems that they've created for themselves. So it's like, well, you're living in this weird, like, quasi half world of some of the stuff from the EU is still canon, but other stuff isn't.
And it's really tricky bringing those bits and pieces back as well, because quite often, they are contingent upon material around them, and they have impacts on material around them as well. If you bring back part of that, it doesn't actually fit in at all. It's like the Ki-Adi-Mundi birthday thing. You might, let's say we can extend his birthday out forever, and he's now centuries old as opposed to a few decades old in the time of the Phantom Menace. Well, but that's his entire character has to be changed because of his relationship with the Jedi and everything that's based upon that one very particular trait that his species has. You can't easily year zero universes like this and then say, well, actually, we quite liked that bit as much as anything, because you keep giving Wikipedia editors heart attacks, and that's very mean.
Yeah, and take Thrawn, for instance, right? Thrawn, who was a villain who became pretty famous because of a trilogy that Timothy Zahn wrote in the early 90s. A lot of people liked his character. So Dave Filoni said, you know what I want to do? I want to bring Thrawn into Star Wars Rebels, and I'm gonna throw all these people that I can write a story to. So he's gonna steal it from someone. But then you turn this character, who was known as a great tactician, as a brilliant person, blah, 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 and you write him like he's retarded because the writers are retarded. So you turn Thrawn, a character who was loved, into a Scooby-Doo-esque villain. And now that's what they've carried on to him in Ahsoka. And so it's pointless. To me, as somebody who read those, is that what I want to see? Do you think that I want to see some fucking half-rotted corpse of a character who is named Thrawn and is blue, but doesn't actually resemble him in any way, brought into Disney Star Wars canon just so they can bend him over and rape him? No, I don't particularly want to see that. And I don't know why anybody who was a fan of those books would ever want to see that.
Plus, he gained some considerable weight, so since the Clone Wars.
Which is weird, because Lars Mikkelsen is not a fat person. Like, I don't know why they made him look like that. Like, I've seen Lars Mikkelsen and other shit. He does not look that way.
You stop.
He prefers to be called a person of girth.
Yeah. Stop fat shaming him.
A pog.
A pog, yeah.
A pog and a mog. Yeah.
I love the amount of stuff that, like, now Disney is actually ripping off their own material as well with this episode. Like, when you said pog, it just made me think of the Porgs. Now we've got the equivalent on fucking Craggy Island where this episode takes place. And that's another just have another recognizable thing. I suppose we need the cutesy animals so that people can overlook the horrible writing of this episode.
Yeah, that's where that $200 million CGI went. So showing the little creatures.
Sure,
yeah, definitely.
Oh boy. Because I think his gambit with her was basically, you can swim over to the ship and then leave if you want. You could just kill me, but the tide's in, so you might want to wait until it goes out, and then it'll be easier. It's like, well, I don't know, man. If I was her, I'd maybe
to be there before sundown was the line, wasn't it? And the ship's like 5 feet away, and you could probably wade it. It's not a challenging swim.
I think probably if it was me, I would just kill him and then just leave. Like, I feel like I just don't want to be associated with this guy. Like, he's not gonna do good things for me in terms of where I am in life.
Can't she just force jump over there?
There's just no incentive for her to not kill him, I suppose. He's given her a straight out of this situation. Kill me, leave, take the ship, off you go. Take your chances. Pretty much, yeah. You're not giving me a lot of incentive to stay here and listen to you.
Again, because it's because she's not a character. So that you can't really say that what she's doing is out of character, because she doesn't have one of those to be out of to begin with. And it's frustrating, because I'd like to have known something about Osha going in that would make her actions explicable. Like, is she actually wavering in her trust of the Jedi, which the script has had many opportunities to show her doing? They could have, the first conversation with Sol on the ship in episode 2, they could have had an argument. You told me my sister was dead. What else have you been lying about? Start building a distrust over time. Keep dropping in those distrustful beats. And then when you finally get her one-on-one with the villain on this mysterious island, she's got a reason to be intrigued at his offer, which goes beyond, hey, he's naked and looks good. But we haven't done any of that stuff. So she's just wandering around emptily. and she's not doing anything, and you can't really look at that and say, well, that's in character or out of it, because she's only there because the script needs her to be there, and that's everything that we're going to get, and it's really, really, really boring to watch.
Yeah. So now that, well, Drinker, this is the problem with Obi-Wan. Remember when, Anakin fought Obi-Wan and he beat him, and what reason would you let Vader live? He's just going to keep killing.
Yeah, exactly. There was a reason to have left him on Mustafar. Like, he had no fucking arms and legs, and he was inside a volcano on fire. It's like, I'm pretty sure that guy's going to die, so I can leave. This time, it's like, no, he's injured, but he's definitely still an active threat, and clearly he's not going to die here. If I leave him, he's going to come back and probably kill a whole lot more innocent people in the process.
I found it funnier than that on top that he was like, any reason you had not to kill me, that you thought I was Anakin or that I could be saved, definitely not a thing. Definitely not, okay?
Yeah.
Just letting you know, no good guy here.
Irredeemable, I am. Irredeemable.
Look, here's my red lights. I'm waving in front of my face so I look all evil. Like, look at me. Just, Obi-Wan, you got no reason not to kill me. Then Obi-Wan cries and leaves.
Yeah, he even tells Obi-Wan, like, you didn't fail me. I killed Anakin. I'm even now more powerful. Okay. So just let him go.
That whole show should never have been done. From concept through to final execution, every single aspect of it was a disaster.
Well, let's be clear. That's one of the easiest non-canons for all of us. We're just like, no way that actually happened. No.
Yeah, remember when they first announced it and people were like, well, there's no way they're going to fight again, right? And I'm like, I'm sure they're not going to fight again, right? Then Kathleen Kennedy comes out and she says, we're headed for the rematch of the century.
Oh my God.
And people are still like, well, they can't. There's no way they could possibly fight, right? That doesn't make any sense. Show comes out. They're like, well, he didn't specifically say the last time that they saw each other was on Mustafar, and trying to do all this explaining away. It was such bullshit.
And what a dumb thing to do as well, like the rematch of the century. Well, it's like, well, they're both still going to be alive in A New Hope. So where's the fucking tension?
The rematch of the century.
It can only end in a draw. Like, they're both going to be okay.
Yeah, it's good with A New Hope. And Vader says, I feel a presence I haven't felt for a very long time, like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Every single like
I mean, to be fair, you've got some of that in the Clone Wars TV show as well.
Oh God, yeah.
Like because Count Dooku, very very specifically, the one I always think of is Dooku, where when you get that fight sequence in Revenge of the Sith. And Obi-Wan and Anakin, hey, we do it together this time. I was just about to say that. And my powers have doubled since we last met, Count. What they didn't mean was every other Saturday on Cartoon Network that these motherfuckers would end up in a fight in a TCW animated show.
True, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, clearly they never meant that, but they shoved that right in.
The fucking riot's got a little troll face being like, they never actually said they were referring to Attack of the Clones. they could have been referring to any fight.
Anakin meant my powers had doubled in the last 2 weeks. That's what he meant, obviously.
Well,
this is where you have to exercise discipline, because it is so easy to go after the cheap, easy payoffs of like, oh, Anakin's going to fight Dooku again, or, Obi-Wan's going to fight Darth Vader again, whatever, because it creates spectacle. It's like two awesome characters that we know well matching up against each other once again, but it's such a short-sighted, limited payoff, and ultimately the damage that it does is so severe to the franchise, and because everything that happens before, and like, if you were smart, if you were actually good at writing, you would come up with new characters for these established ones to fight, who are equally interesting and equally compelling, and then you don't have to undercut your own lore.
Well, that's the thing, though, isn't it? Because they have no new ideas, they have no creativity, so they've basically turned Star Wars into something like WrestleMania, where it's like, well, fuck it, let's just bring back 70-year-old Undertaker because we remember him and everyone loved him. Let's have another fight with a pensioner. Great. Could you do something new? Nah, that's tough and difficult and expensive.
Yeah. I mean, Acolyte is something new, but unfortunately, at its core, it's written by people that have no idea what they're doing.
Oh God.
I think at its core, it's written by people who hate Star Wars and just wanted to tell a story about like two sisters fighting and falling in love and doing all the usual bullshit, and like Star Wars was just a convenient framework for it.
Certainly people who see Star Wars and they're like, man, Star Wars is fucked up because it didn't have this. Let's do this.
Yeah,
And
it's
you're
written by people that want to turn Star Wars into a platform for their version of identity politics, whatever that may be.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's not okay that there wasn't enough diversity, there wasn't enough gay people in the original trilogy. So we need to turn Star Wars into what we've always wanted it to be. Well, if you've always wanted to turn it into something else, then you were never really a fucking fan to begin with.
I could see
Well
it as
said,
well
Ryan.
as just like beyond even just the identity politics aspect of it, of just I want to turn it into a 13-year-old Tumblr user's idea of like, you know, romance and taking like just some characters that I vaguely understand or recognize and putting them into these like shipper kind of situations. That's all it is. Like Star Wars is just a launch pad for that. It's like in exactly the same way that probably Twilight inspired a million like sleazy fanfics of various characters getting it on. That's just all this is. It's just they had $180 million to spend on it.
But it's the weird thing with the Acolyte is, having been promised that it is the gayest Star Wars of all time, it's not. Well, on the one hand, it is in the other meaning of the sense gay, but on the other hand, it's not that at all. In fact, it's more just allowing straight women to simp on villains than it is actually, let's do an interesting thing with Jackie and Osha as a character, for example. And I actually think there was a lot of potential for those two, because you only ever would have assumed that was the case if you'd read it in the interview that was what was supposed to happen, because they never bothered getting it into the show. So if you're going to do it, do it. But if you're not going to do it, don't say that you've done it and then poison the well, because no one's going to like that very much.
Well, how much of it is this the actual writer's intentions? And it's like, well, we put it in as subtext or whatever. And how much of it is just the actors going completely off the map and just saying what they think interviewers or whatever want to hear? You know, when the actress playing Jackie is like, oh yeah, she's like totally gay for Osha, like yeah, fully scissoring right there, and then like there's nothing in the script to support that.
I felt that the way they interacted in what was that episode 4, at the beginning of episode 4, I think I said that during our EFAP thing. I'm like, are they implying that something's like going on with them? Because it was just a strange familiarity that they had. And obviously, it didn't take them very long to get from wherever the fuck they were to Coruscant. So it's not like it was that long of a ride that they could have had this connection. So it felt strange. And I would say now with the conversation that Kymir has with her, that is like the hint they were going for. But the whole thing is, it's not actually gay or queer. It's just like queer coded, whatever fucking word that they like to use, where they're not gonna go there. They're not actually gonna have these lesbian witches kiss or anything. They're just giving you the hint. They're like dangling it there so they can claim that it is, but maybe not turn people off or something. I don't really know why they didn't just go all in when Leslie Headland said she wanted to be such a big part of what she was doing.
I think it's the censors. Remember when Force Awakens came out and they removed Finn from the poster?
Yeah, but I mean, Andor had more gay action than this. Like,
true.
I don't know.
It does feel a little bit pathetic, right? The whole between episodes, they're like, man, we really got to know each other well. Yes, we have. You're like, what the fuck? You don't need to tell the writers. They know what they're doing. They knew when they wrote that, they were like, is this cheating? It's like, yeah. Like, all right.
But we're going to do it anyway.
We'll do it anyway.
Mean, yeah, there's... Because, the events of the previous episode could have been shocking and deeply moving if you actually cared about any of the characters involved. If you really liked Yord and Jackie and just seeing them brutally killed like that, oh man, that could have brought tears to everyone's eyes. But like, no one cared about these characters because they weren't characters; they were just vessels for the plot.
And ironically, cared way more about K2SO than all the people in the show combined who died.
Yeah.
Well, plus, Drinker, some of the Jedis, they actually didn't even have names. It just says Jedi 1, Jedi 2 as he's killing them.
Oh yeah, the red shirts basically.
Oh my god, Jedi red shirt. Like
the Yord horde was devastated with the death of Yord Fandar. Okay, like that was a big deal to people on Twitter.
When Kymir eventually dies, like that's it. Like people are going to lose their minds because I'm sure there's a lot of shippers out there now for him.
Oh,
That's what it's all about. This whole thing is now it's exactly the same way the Reylos were with Rey and Kylo Ren. Like this idea of this weird, sick, abusive power fantasy that some women actually have out there. which is why all the Harry Potter fanfic written by women has Draco essentially raping Hermione and them falling in love. Like, it's
my
the same
God.
weird mindset that some fucking disturbed women have.
It's well, you're forgetting that the female lens is, the way we need to view Star Wars now. Apparently, so
It's
You
funny
could've-
how. Sorry, Mo.
I don't know. I'm just on Yord. It's like I didn't particularly like the actor's performance. I didn't particularly like the character. But if you drop me in as a writer and it's like I've got to do something with him on episode 5, they're like, well, we'll have him get wounded probably significantly, and we'll have him see a couple of people he was really connected to die, and this will be his moment of becoming an actual Jedi Knight, learning to be a master, because he'll have realized the world is a lot fucking harder than he thought it was. He has to take things a lot. He's going to be a lot more quiet. He's going to think about things a lot carefully. He's going to be fucking torn apart by this event, Because like up to that point, what have you got for him? Well, he was a little in over his head. He wasn't particularly good. He took a while to become knight. That's really all I've got. So what I'm trying to say is like, oh, are we trying to build a story for him? It's like, no, he's dead. His story's done. You're like, oh.
you know how you could have used him in this episode, like not have him get killed in the previous one, but just badly wounded. They carry him back to the ship. He's the only one, remember, who can understand what Basil says. So he's like unconscious from his injuries. Basil's trying to undercut what May's doing,
And then Mace
and
slits his
eventually
throat.
he's trying to like warn someone about it, and then Yord wakes up just enough for Basil to convey the warning to him.
It's
And
that
that
or
would be an opportunity for him to either, May could either kill him then before he could then give that warning to Saul.
How satisfying would it
something.
be to have him knock her the fuck out, knowing who she is and how she's connected to him losing all of his friends?
Yeah,
True.
Anything. It's not even that significant. Just anything, please. Something for us to watch happen. A character to make a decision.
please give us anything.
make him a character. Even if you did insist on killing him in the episode in which he dies, then okay, we've established in episode 1 that he was friends with Osha and they were at the temple together. He is also he's a stickler for the rules. We know that about him. So he's going through with his duty and arresting her, but once she's exonerated, that could be a load off the shoulders and they could actually start reacquainting and becoming friends. That's when you could have the conversations about what Osha did at the Jedi Temple, which saw her leave in the end. Yord nearly failed, she did fail, they have a point of commonality, they finally become friends again, then he dies, and then she can be sad about that because it's nice to have a protagonist react when another character dies. But instead what we did was they had a conversation very hastily thrown in between her and Jackie, when Jackie hilariously says, "You've had more experience with death than I have." Like, not anymore, no, but okay. And that was it. That's all they did to try and make us show that Osha cared about the people who were about to die. One conversation, great.
And Yord being a total dick by trying to, remove her blaster from her.
Yeah, and that's
I
the
don't know
thing,
what
right?
they're doing with
Which,
that.
which went nowhere.
That's Jedi property.
Yeah,
And that blaster's now coming to play 1 million more times.
yeah.
That blaster
It's really fast.
But that
It's
whole
getting some use.
conversation, but that conversation went nowhere. It was like, give that to me. It's Jedi property. No, it's mine now. And then they get interrupted, and then again they get interrupted, and then the entire impetus of the conversation changes, and they go off and do something different.
And then
What
she
was the point
says
in doing
in
that
the interim beat is when she says, if I have to face my sister, you're going to have to take her out because I can't. I was like, okay, so give me the stun gun back, because you've just said you're not going to use it. But she doesn't do that. But then she does shoot her sister, and so that conversation doesn't go anywhere either because she was perfectly capable of doing that. So it's
the whole
like
point. The whole point of giving someone a stun gun is like, well, I can subdue them then without having to kill them. So I'm not going to have a moral quandary of taking on my sister. I can just stun her. We'll get some answers out of her and then deal with her later. Easy. She doesn't have to die.
I guess stunning her hurts her.
It's also just so frustrating that they're trying so hard in this show to tell you that the Jedi aren't the heroes, the Sith aren't the villains. It's really just all a matter of your own perspective. And even with the titles of almost every single episode, that's what they're going for, right? From a certain point of view, the Jedi are evil. But the difference is in every Star Wars project, like up to this point, there is a pretty clear, that does it get a little gray sometimes because you have sympathy for like maybe some people that get caught up in this world or whatever, maybe, but it is very clear who the good guys and the bad guys are. Doesn't mean the good guys are perfect. Doesn't mean the Jedi are infallible, but it is very obvious who the morally right people and the morally wrong people are in the situation. And this show is going out of its way to try to change the way you think about that. And I don't think it feels very Star Wars-esque.
Oh, you're right, Ryan. Well, it's like Sith are bad, Jedi are good. Even with Last Jedi, it seems like they started that downward spiral of like now maybe the Jedi weren't really that good. Maybe their ways were outdated. Maybe they were the villains. Like, no, they weren't. The Sith, Palpatine and Vader, who killed billions of people, were the bad guys.
It's one thing to present you with morally grey dilemmas and then almost butt the Jedi's strict moral code up against that and say here's a situation where it doesn't work particularly well. It's not compatible with that, and sometimes the world is a bit more complex and nuanced than just strictly good or evil. That's one way of doing it, but what you have here is a purposeful deconstruction of the very essence of what the Jedi represent.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. It's like we straight up want you to see them now as villains rather than giving you an opportunity to see them in different contexts. That's a very different thing. It's the same the way they tried to deconstruct Luke Skywalker in TLJ.
Yeah.
Well, arguably they succeeded because they made him into a complete fucking coward and a loser. But it's not the character that we remember. It doesn't line up with anything we knew about him and his previous character arcs. It's an attempt to deconstruct him so that you don't like him anymore, so that you'll more readily accept his replacement. I feel like it's a very cynical way to do storytelling.
They've like damaged the word subversion and deconstruction as well. These are words that can be associated with projects that aren't complete cringe, but oh well. Thanks.
Yeah, I've got a video coming out about that.
What's funny, Drink, with this show? Remember when the flashback with they go to the village and they see the two mothers? The witches openly attack the Jedi. They're there on a peaceful mission, and then Smiler Ren's like, "Oh, they're trying to kill me." They're not trying to kill you, dude. You keep trying to kill all of them. They're just defending themselves.
Yeah, well, as MauLer said, it's like he's preemptively killing them because he thinks that like at some point in the future they will try and kill him.
Which is all shit, and he's not going to get challenged on it in any interesting or meaningful way whatsoever. You remember that fucking made-up character that we've been referencing throughout all of this Acolyte shit, the Enforcer? Imagine he caught him, this guy who's just brutal, and then starts trying to explain to this guy who's like a veteran Jedi, saying, you judged me for killing you guys when you would have done that. And he's just like, shut up. You sent your stupid Acolyte to kill Trinity, to make that dumbass commit suicide. How are you trying to take the moral high ground? Are you serious right now?
Like some actual pushback on a retarded argument.
Yeah.
Kill me and be done with it, you fucking moron. Like, I can't take this. Like, do you do this with every one of the people you kidnap?
Well, he tried so hard to justify his position in episode 5, I think, where he said, like, I just want to be able to explore the Force the way I want to do it and train people the way I want to do it. Okay, like pick a random fucking planet in the middle of nowhere and just go do that then. Don't announce your presence. Don't try and kill Jedi. The galaxy is quite a big place, and you could probably get away with doing all kinds of like different ideas of the Force and all that stuff without anyone ever knowing about it.
Well,
but you chose to take the offensive there, sir.
I would say that's a decent argument. Unfortunately, in this show, they've already seen the Jedi invading on people who are trying to do just that. But we don't know enough about the witches to know what their intentions were in the long run.
True.
But we did see the Jedi just literally fucking storm in and say, hey, we have the right to these children as long as you give us the right. Or whatever that conversation was.
That whole conversation was absurd. It's like we thought this planet was uninhabited despite the gigantic fortress that we saw here and the clear life signs that we saw. Then it's like, we heard you've got children here. There's no children here. Then the children appear and
Republic law says we have the right to. Well, we're not in the Republic. You should have known that. That's a stupid line to try. Well, we have the right anyway if you say yes. Okay.
It's like, well, we say no.
I always took it as like the Jedi were afraid that if you had untrained children, they could become a Sith. That's what they're worried about.
Not necessarily Sith, because they think that they're gone, but that they could be manipulated or used or corrupted, because there are other people that use the dark side that are not just Sith, right? There are Jedi that have fallen and done damage and things like that before, but not necessarily the Sith order.
Yeah.
See, that's something they could have probably played into a bit more in that episode, like a little bit more of an explanation of, children who are powerful in the Force and who are untrained are very vulnerable to falling victim to like nefarious influences or whatever. They could just be dangerous to everyone around them. That's why we have to try and train them so they can understand this power that they have.
But the show's
That's something-
unfortunately undercut that because it has Kymir say in the last episode, if you don't train with the Force, then you kind of lose your ability with it. In which case, how the hell do the Jedi ever find any Force-sensitive kid? Because they've never been trained to use it. There's another one of those very lazy little lines that does quite a lot of damage to everything in the galaxy.
Well, doesn't Kymir say the opposite? Whereas, like, that's their belief, but like his belief is like there's many different ways to access the power of the Force. It's just that's considered to be the dark side. And it's not a case of constant discipline and training.
He's saying that it's always there, and of course, the Jedi are saying that if you don't use it, it goes away. That's the conflict we're having right now. That's why he gives her that bullshit helmet.
Yeah, he's saying it's like you access it through intense emotions, which is exactly the path of the Sith.
And the intense emotions didn't kick in when she was on a crashing spaceship and tried to use the Force to escape certain death, or what she thought was certain death. That wasn't intense enough for her to use the Force.
She knew she would be okay because she read the script.
Yeah.
She had a plot armor on.
On top of her watching him kill all these different Jedi in front of her, that was intense emotions.
Well, she was trying to clear her mind and just access the Force and not use her emotions. I mean, Yoda, talks about this, in Empire, where it is a quicker, easier path to power. Is it more powerful? If you have a fully trained Sith and a fully trained Jedi Master, no, it's not more powerful necessarily, but it can get you more powerful quicker than doing it the right way, the Jedi way, the light side path.
This is why it's such a great juxtaposition of moral values. Do you value the longer, harder, more difficult road to success that's going to require a lot more discipline and sacrifice for you, but perhaps promises greater rewards at the end of it? Or do you value the quick and easy route that's going to get you what you want a lot more easily? But potentially it is going to undo you. When you get to that point.
You see it with bodybuilders. How many bodybuilders pump steroids at 30 years old and by 40 they can't walk anymore? Versus some guys, like how are they 50, 60, 70, they're in fantastic shape.
I mean, because the Force is just a vehicle for this, but you can apply it to anything in life. Like whether it's getting promotions at work, whether it's like training, like you say, as an athlete or something, and you're going to use like all kinds of performance enhancers. Whatever the thing might be, it's ultimately suggesting that the path of discipline and self-sacrifice and taking the longer, harder road is ultimately probably going to give you a better result in the end, and it'll give you the wisdom and the self-control to be able to use this new power that you have versus just lashing out at the world because you've never learned to restrain yourself. It's an interesting paradigm, and it's a pretty universal thing that you could apply to basically any aspect of life, which is the core of what Star Wars is what makes it so interesting. It's just universal themes projected onto this galactic space opera.
Yeah.
But we don't get that now.
One thing for the panel, would you ever consider a Jedi to be samurais or monks? Because I always took them as samurais, and samurais, the old veterans, you get to be a master after like 20, 30, 40 years of training. That's how I always took the dark side path, but wasn't sure you guys felt.
They're kind of like warrior monks, aren't they, ultimately?
Yeah, a little bit of a blend, I would say. I wouldn't say it's one or the other, but certainly taking action and like using violence would be a typical last resort for them, right? They wouldn't want for anything to devolve until that point. At least that wouldn't be what the Jedi would train. Be kind of your last option.
I've seen people mention how cringe this show is, and how we just want characters like Mace Windu back who'll chop a motherfucker's head off as soon as they're becoming too much of a problem. It's like, I miss people like that.
Yeah. I mean, Jango Fett deserved it,
Fucking easy.
Have you seen what the original cut for that scene was?
I think I have, but I forget.
He chops off like a couple of his arms and legs, and then he fucking cuts his head off or something.
Really?
Damn, that's brutal.
That's awesome.
Just before we go on, can I do a couple of super chats? Because there's a couple of biggies that have come in while we've been doing this.
Oh yeah.
The first up is from Andrew Romanowski. Says, hello from NYC and happy 4th of July. And to you, sir. Drinker, you've mentioned before that you outline your books before writing them. Could you make a video that details your outlining process or something similar? It would really help us aspiring writers out a lot. Thanks if you do. Yeah, thanks, man. I pretty sure I've done a second video about writing advice on my second channel, where it's like I actually talk about the process of outlining the plot, how you flesh out characters, how you actually make the time to, write the thing chapter after chapter, and then get your way through to the end, and then do redrafts and stuff. So if you look that up, I think it might be the featured video actually on the second channel. Yeah. It should be there, and that should tell you quite a bit about my thoughts on the process of outlining a plot and then develop it into a fully fleshed out story. So let me know how you get on with that one, and if you need more, I'll see what I can do. Sonny Close said, "Stop calling him discount Ezra Miller. Despite the show, the guy's worth 10 Ezra Millers. Go with premium Ezra Miller." I agree. Actually, he's graduated.
I always thought that the discount thing was just appealing to how much these actors would cost to cast, and Ezra's probably a higher amount of money at this point, but maybe not now. Actually, maybe this guy.
Whenever I hear that, I always think of, hey, we have Ezra Miller at home, like a lesser version. But I think just with what we've seen, I think Manny Jacinto is better than Ezra Miller as an actor.
I agree.
Yeah, he's 100 times less annoying, and he can actually pull off the kind of, I don't know what they're quite going for, but it's almost like a sensual, like the way he moves and stuff, like it's like power, but like he's trying to be a bit seductive towards Osha as well. And very controlled, very charismatic. It's quite an interesting combination for a villain, and I think he pulls it off pretty well.
I think got two roles, right? He's got Chimere, he's got Chimere and the Stranger. And he even like shifted to it. Was it when Osha ran up or when May ran up, when he was like right after he killed Jackie or some shit? He's like, "Oh, hello." Like he like shifted back to the Chimere personality for a minute before he snapped Yord's neck.
Yeah. Zach Muffin says, "Hello, Mublishy and Drunkard. Never forget that the two of you led me to the Fellowship, so that officially makes you part of the alt-right sludge pipeline. MauLer, you better not pull George and never finish the TFA review."
People keep comparing me to him. It's kind of funny because I'm still, but what I think of the end of TFA. I'm not telling a story. There's no spoilers to discover. It's bad, but I'll get there someday for sure. Yes,
we believe you. Toxic Monger of the Hateful Brood says, got paid. Bossman gave me an extra day off to start my weekend early and the open bar. Thank God it's good to be an American. USA. Nice, man. Thank you. But yeah, obviously the other thing that we've had this week, because, the whole thing with this open bar tonight began with us talking about cocks. And that all came from episode 3 of House of the Dragon.
The way you said it, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the defining aspect of this episode. I think we were just swimming in cocks with that episode. they just couldn't put enough of them in there. But yeah, I'd be interested, I guess, to hear your thoughts on how the episode played out and where we think it's going to be leading next. Because we're 3 episodes in now, we're pretty well established with season 2. And the PCs are moving, I suppose.
You might want to, I guess, restrict spoilers because a lot of people know exactly where it's going.
Yeah. Well, I don't. It's a spoiler to say based off the preview we got for episode 4 and the title for episode 4, A Dance of Dragons, that we're finally going to have some shit go down. We're finally going to get some hot dragon on dragon action.
Oh, damn. The way he said that.
Yes.
I meant hot because of fire.
Yeah,
obviously.
Of course.
Yeah, because they keep talking about, and they kind of make a valid point that if you deploy dragons on the battlefield, then the other side will use theirs, and it's basically like nuclear warfare. That's the equivalent, and so that's why they've been so reluctant to actually use them as weapons.
I've seen discussion that Rhaenyra has entered several times at this point. Her "I give no fucks and will attack" phase, and that's what we're supposed to have gathered somewhat from the last scene of the 3rd episode. That she now knows there's no stopping the war, and she's going to have to actually make some moves. As you know, her council have been pretty critical of her speed in which she is deciding to do fucking anything.
Rightly so.
there's a good chance she's going to authorize the use of dragons, and the response from the Greens will probably be that Aegon remains at King's Landing, I'm guessing, with Sunfire, and that Vhagar's going to go with Aemond to Harrenhal, I assume. I have no idea. I'm going from the little images in the promo, but my hope, this is just me, and Ryan's got to be so careful, with expressions, because I can tell if it's going to happen. I want Aemond and Vhagar to eat the shit out of Rhaenys and Meleys. I want them to die. I'm done with her being in this show. She sucks. Kill her.
Damn, dude.
So, but from the promo, it looks like I might be in luck. I'm hoping.
Why do you want to kill children?
She's not a child.
Rhaenys is the oldest bitch in this story.
Yeah.
Is that the one that just keeps? She was Viserys' sister.
Like cousin.
Oh yeah, sorry, cousin. Yeah, she was the one who passed over for the crown. Yeah,
correct.
And that's literally her entire character, is just her being pissed off that she never got to be
bitching
queen
throughout both seasons about how she's just right about everything.
Yeah, I think she needs to go. Yeah, I can see that happening.
It's about time.
You're old now. Well, if
Also,
Disney's taught me anything, it's like once you get old, you give up on everything and you become a complete loser and just useless. So yeah, that's about right.
True.
And then you die.
My favorite Rhaenys moment is in the best episode of season 1, where she realizes she was probably wrong to be obsessed with getting that crown when she sees Viserys and how difficult the job has been for him. It's like, finally, some interesting layer to the character that I can understand and relate to in some way of like, yeah, you got to appreciate how difficult it is. But she's just...
Rhaenys' entire thing this whole time has been saying how, men are very quick to let their blood heat up and go to violence, and women need to hold the realm together. And unfortunately, the main women in the story, her, Alicent, and Rhaenyra, have all had opportunities to take action that would have put an end to this thing with barely any bloodshed, and they refused to do so.
Well, I wonder if the show, you could, maybe I'm being a bit generous here. Maybe the writers are trying to persuade us for both points of view that being hot-blooded and just immediately rushing out to war and conquest and destruction is obviously not a good outcome, and it's just going to lead to massive amounts of hardship and suffering for everyone. But also being inactive and passive and super restrained is just as...
Dude, the irony is going to make my head explode. As the several layers of irony that, like, her hot-blooded nature of deciding whether or not she wants to kill the royal family had her completely ignore the idea that she'd killed potentially hundreds of innocent people, including children. So interesting to me, especially that episode was written by a woman, that they didn't even notice all of the innocent people that they stood on in order to make the point that she wouldn't kill people. Isn't that just the height of a hilarious thing that happened in this series?
Well, I think one thing that will come into play, and I don't know if it's directly to counteract that or not, but they've been obviously setting it up a lot several times this season, is that the people in charge, the people who rule, the lords and ladies of Westeros, the kings, the queens, whatever, for the most part, they don't give a fuck about the small people. They do not give a shit.
Yeah,
true. And I have a feeling that sometime later, maybe not this season, and maybe even not quite next season, but I think next season they're going to start to get into it. I think that's going to come back to bite them in the ass. Just a gut feeling that I have.
Good call.
Also, from someone who's read the source material.
Are we going to lose Daemon this season?
I fucking hope not. God, I love that Matt Smith.
I'm going by that prophecy / dream that he had where he was told that he was going to die here at Harrenhal. I mean, obviously that doesn't mean he's going to die right now or anything, but
I mean, he could. There's nothing stopping it. It would be a bit of a loss for the show because every scene he is in, he completely captures the audience. I think they know that. But
but does he do it because of Matt Smith or because of the character being extremely well written?
I think it's more Matt Smith than it is Daemon, but it's both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt Smith is having a time of his life with this role.
It's I don't want to say anything that'll spoil it for anybody, but I will say while he's at Harrenhal, because when he went there in the book goes, hey, Daemon went captured Harrenhal, and he was kind of just out of the story for a while for some of the other things that might happen. I really like what they're doing. That person's name is Alice Rivers, the person that he happened upon, and there's There's weird stories about Harrenhal, about it potentially being haunted and things like this. There's weird stories about that woman that he saw specifically.
That was the witch, right?
And so the idea that Daemon, in a mad fury, after being right about some of the things he confronted Rhaenyra on, but with her also being right about some of the insecurities and the way Daemon's always felt about shit, he rushes off because he desperately wants to find an enemy, right? Because that's what he can do. Daemon can do that. Daemon can kill people, whether it's with a dragon, with a sword, whatever. He rushes off to find an enemy, only to get to Harrenhal and for it to be basically empty, unguarded, undefended. Not much for him to do. Yeah. But now he's forced to confront his real enemy, which might be himself in a lot of ways, with some of these flashbacks that he might see. So I really enjoy the fact that they're doing that while he's at Harrenhal.
No, I can get that. I thought it was interesting as well that he insists on being called Your Grace rather than my lord, i.e. I'm not a king consort or prince consort or anything. I am actual king.
Yeah, they keep calling him Prince Daemon.
Yeah. Which, because MauLer, you and I discussed this about, like, where does he see himself in terms of, like, his respective rank versus Rhaenyra, and, like, does he actually secretly want to be in charge himself? Like, she obviously confronts him about that very same thing. And I was of the opinion that I think he's loyal enough that he wants her to be queen and nominally in charge, but he wants to be on equal footing with her as king, essentially with a strong say over what gets done. And this seems to back that up, the fact that he sees himself as a king on level pegging with her.
It's complicated, right? Like, it seems that Daemon's a bit chaotic. Exactly what he'll do and how far he'll take anything is up for grabs somewhat when it comes down to the actual decisions being made. I took this as a couple of things all at once. One being a proof that he's actually useful to this team and way more than he's being respected for, as like a show of power, and to actually make a significant change in the war as it's unfolding. It's like made out of frustration. And then also just he wants to get out of Dragonstone because sitting there dealing with these notions about what his brother felt about him and what his current wife and queen feels about him. There's a lot going on, right? That's what makes the show so interesting to talk about, I think. And having all of that on his mind and then seeing the visions, the man is pretty tormented. And I don't know if you knew this, Ryan. I found it out today. Apparently, originally, he was supposed to just walk through Harrenhal with not coming across anybody, or rather that there was a guard.
And he ran away.
Yeah, but the Matt Smith said, no, I want to beat the fuck out of him.
Yeah. He's like, no, I really think I should just like beat the shit out of this guy and like unload everything on him. And they're like, all right, let's try that. And he did that. They're like, that works. That's Daemon right there.
Well, I mean, I think it's nice to be reminded that he is actually a pretty formidable warrior in his own right. I mean, you saw that in season 1 when he launches that protracted war against the Crab King, is it? Like
the Triarchy.
Yeah, really struggles with it for a long time, and then just straight up goes in there, fucking sword in hand, and just bisects the guy, and then just comes out with his like half of his corpse. You know, I guess that's a pretty apt summary of how Daemon likes to approach problems. He gets frustrated by inaction and by problems, and he just wants to approach it with brute force. So, yeah, I can get why he would want to take Harrenhal like this. And probably was quite disappointed that there wasn't more opposition that he could flatten. But yeah, he's a loose cannon still. Yeah. Probably always 100%. Will be.
He loves to fight.
Yeah. But yeah, I suppose the episode is episode 3 was just very much a moving of the pieces kind of episode, like building up to something rather than delivering much in the way of resolutions by itself.
The way we put it when we were talking about it, the audience is starting to get restless. They want to see some progress on major events and pace up a bit, which it looks like we're getting in the promo for episode 4.
The thing is, it's tough because it really is a shift for the first season. Every episode, you might be going 5 years, 10 years in between each episode, right?
True.
And it's all centered around some pretty important things. So most of them feel like there's a lot that has been covered or needs to be covered, or interactions that you're trying to feel how these people care about each other now. Whereas this one, we're now, all of the events of season 2 have transpired within a week or two. You know, like that's what we're talking about. So it does seem like maybe the pace is ground to a halt a little bit. But for people that are desperate for a battle sequence because you started watching Game of Thrones in season 5, you're finally going to get a battle.
It's an interesting point because I mean, my rather punishing work schedule at the moment has meant I have not paid as much attention to House of the Dragon as I would like to. But I have seen all of the episodes, and my impression of it, admittedly being sort of very second monitor basis, was that it's sort of become a little bit like what people who didn't like Game of Thrones thought Game of Thrones was, which is just lots of people. It's the South Park skit, everyone walking around in a garden talking about betrayal, and that's kind of it.
Sure.
It's not hooked me in anything like the same degree as season 1 did. I wasn't sure if that was entirely down to me not paying it enough attention or whether it was due to pacing, things like that. But I now feel slightly better. They might have been to do with the pacing. I was saying it sort of lacks the warm hook of having, obviously, we begin in season 1 with the young Rhaenyra and Alicent, and they're quite endearing characters. They're actually people you can kind of like for a little while, as opposed to people you can be generically interested in for political reasons, which I think just made it an easier re-entry to the franchise.
On that note, because I really want to hear from Ryan on the comparison to Game of Thrones season 1 as well. But for me, what really drew me in, and I think a lot of people for Game of Thrones season 1, is that you're following what is the hero's hero going on an investigation to uncover a plot that's potentially going to destroy the entire kingdom. It's really, really interesting. And you're really, really on his side. And you know that his family is one that's just, look at them go. They're so honorable and nice and wonderful. And then the more we find out about the blonde fuckers, the more we're like, they're the bad guy. I want to stop them. And then, of course, they get the upper hand by the time the season's coming to a close. And so you're like, I'm so ready for this to turn back, for the good guys to win. And, you get all your different characters and the world spot out as the season goes on. A lot of people have said about House of the Dragon that there's no one to root for.
It is, and almost by design in a few ways, because when you look at it, should Rhaenyra actually be queen? No. Viserys made a mistake. Viserys made a really stupid mistake because he was angry at Daemon and named her the heir, even though he knew damn well, Otto told him, a million other people told him, that if you do this, it will cause unrest. The idea that after everything we went through, and your cousin was literally passed over for you to have the throne, that you would go and do this, there's going to be people that have a problem with it. So no. And what does she do? She's irresponsible as fuck. She marries Laenor, but doesn't actually bear his children. She risks the murder of her entire family if people knew that that's what she did. And luckily, her father's weak enough that he looks the other way. And then you look over at Aegon. Should Aegon be king? Well, by rights, yes. But look at this person. He was never raised with the idea that he was going to be king. He was raised with the idea that he would just get to fuck around, rape the maids, and watch children fight to the death in fighting pits. So you almost can't blame him for not being ready to ascend to this. But essentially, you're talking about a story where there's very few good, honorable people. But this is a Song of Ice and Fire world where we know how things usually end for those good, honorable people. And it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
This is the slight problem that you get when you get to the end point of the Game of Thrones philosophy with how you write stories and tell and show characters and so on, where, like you say quite correctly, there aren't any like strictly honorable, really warm, likable characters that you can really latch onto and say, I really want this guy to do well. With a show like House of the Dragon, and I've said this to MauLer before as well, I recognize intellectually that it's a well-written piece of media, very well constructed, very interesting, deals with a lot of interesting, complex political maneuverings. But I don't necessarily get excited about watching it, and it's a strange one. Like when I watch the episodes, I'm appreciating what I'm seeing, good acting, good dialogue, all that good stuff. But because I'm not necessarily rooting for anyone, because none of the characters are designed to be particularly likable, even Daemon, like he's not a good guy that I think, oh yeah, I want this heroic guy to do well. I'm never that excited for it. I'm more just like curious intellectually to see how it plays out. And I don't know if that's perhaps a failing on my part or if it's a fundamental problem of the way this show is written. And is it going to cause problems the further it goes down this path?
That's good to say, Jern, because like Ryan was saying, you look at Game of Thrones, who is the main character, who's the main good guy? Ned Stark. And we see what happened to Ned Stark for being the good guy.
Yeah. Well,
But then arguably most of his sons are good people as well. Like Jon Snow is a good person. You know, he dies as well, but he gets resurrected, so that's okay.
The thing with Jon is TV show Jon is very different from the book Jon.
I've heard that.
Book Jon Snow, it's not to say he's a bad person, but he is very willing to compromise much more than his father was. He makes decisions that are kind of brutal at times. He literally steals someone's baby in a desperate effort to protect another baby, regardless of how that mother feels about having her baby stolen away from her and potentially being put in danger. He helps Stannis way more than he should in his role as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Like, he does things that his father probably wouldn't be okay with. Whereas Show Jon is literally just like, it's all about honor. I don't want it. Like, Book Jon desperately wants to be fucking Lord of Winterfell. Like, desperately deep in his heart. Multiple times it gets offered to him, and he really fucking wants it bad. And there's a lot of questions where, because we don't know what happens in the book, Jon is still literally laying there dead in the snow in the book, and he has been for 11 fucking years. Thanks, badass George R.R. Martin. Gonna die of fucking, one of the only people to actually die of COVID because he's fat as shit. But when he comes back, he's not going to be like the Jon we saw in the show, where effectively nothing was different about him other than he had a couple holes. Like, death means something, and to be resurrected from death costs something in the Game of Thrones world.
To be fair, I was actually going to argue that Show Jon is not much like Show Jon.
In the last couple seasons.
Yeah, once you get the latter seasons, Jon is just gone. He's not even a character anymore. He's just being pushed around.
Well, but, you know, comparing Game of Thrones, especially when it was in its prime, ignoring the last few seasons of it, versus House of the Dragon, I'm just not feeling that same resonance. Like, I feel like it's not attracting that same audience. You know, like, Game of Thrones just absolutely was part of the zeitgeist of the time. Like, everyone was talking about it. It was a water cooler show that, you know, even people who weren't necessarily into fantasy were suddenly invested in Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like House of the Dragon hasn't reached that point. And I feel like now that we're well into season 2, I don't know, man. Maybe it's never going to. Maybe it's just going to be a more niche sort of audience for this.
I don't think it can be less approachable, right? Because if you look at the premises of the two different shows, actually, there's a huge number of points of comparison with Game of Thrones and Dune, the first Dune book. You have, you know, the multiple great houses. You have the call from one to go. You have Ned Stark, who then goes to fucking names in Game of Thrones is just failing me completely. Goes to, what's the main big capital?
King's Landing.
King's Landing. And then he takes over a new important role, gets killed, son becomes more important. Like, there was all these things going on, but you begin Game of Thrones from the perspective of a much more novice set of characters. You've got Ned Stark, who's been taken out of his familiar surroundings into somewhere new. You've got Jon Snow, who's been taken out of familiar surroundings and put into somewhere new. All of these brand new, very big aspects of your world are being seen for the first time by the people who are in them. Whereas House of the Dragon, by its nature, isn't like that. House of the Dragon, you do join these people pretty much midway through. They are all much more familiar with their surroundings than anybody else is, and certainly the new time audience is. So it's not necessarily the most approachable show. For all that, I actually felt more for some of the characters in House of the Dragon season 1 than I did for most characters in Game of Thrones. I thought, again, like, younger Rhaenyra, I think, was really endearing. Paddy Considine's character, Viserys, was brilliantly performed, but also had a very, very, beautifully poignant arc as well. I found myself caring about the characters. It was just, it took a much longer time, I think, for me to sort of lapse into the world. And now we are in the nitty gritty of it, and I'm not as enmeshed in it as perhaps I should be. None of the more intricate parts of the character dynamics and the relationships are really feeling like they're paying off, but that might just be for lack of foreknowledge or lack of proper immersion.
I also do think when you look at the source material where both of these things are derived, so much about what made the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones so great was so much of it was directly from the story itself. like pulled straight from the book, whether it was dialogue, whether it was the characters that are interacting, like whatever, pulled straight from the fucking book. The source material that this comes from is not a novel, like a story about these characters. It's a Cliff Notes bullet point version of a history of the Targaryens in Westeros. So
Yeah.
like this entire, A Question of Succession is probably like 30 or 40 pages, which was some of what we got in the first season. And then the next 40 or so pages is kind of this civil war that breaks out and the ramifications from that. So the characters themselves, there's not as much just to pull from the source and put it on page as much as they're really inventing a lot of things in terms of like what they're saying to each other, how they're interacting with each other, things like that. So I don't know if maybe that has a part to play and maybe why people don't feel as attached to these characters, because so much of it has been on the fly adapted as opposed to straight from George.
Is part of it as well, perhaps, like the reason Game of Thrones was so impactful back in the day is, as you guys pointed out, you took the traditionally heroic character of Ned Stark, the guy that you imagined was going to be up against adversity throughout the show, and he was going to be a main character, and eventually he was going to triumph against the bad guys, and then they just straight up killed him at the end of the first season, and it was shocking, and it was unexpected, and it subverted the tropes of the fantasy genre to the point where people became hooked then, because then they felt like nobody was safe.
Yeah.
Which is great. Okay, it worked really well, but then it feels like that's the kind of card you can only play once in terms of attracting people to your show. And maybe because of that, like, again, you're not going to have the shock factor with something like House of the Dragon when you kill off a major character, because people kind of expect it in this world now. It's not new or innovative anymore. It's just the norm for the Game of Thrones world.
Game of Thrones played that card twice. Season 3, Robb Stark, Catelyn Stark, and the majority of the Stark forces got killed.
Well, that's my point, though. Yeah, they played it many times. Many characters got killed off, particularly towards the end. And it's like, fine, you've established that these characters live in a world where being heroic or being a character that would normally be the main character of the narrative isn't any kind of protection for you. Plot armor doesn't work necessarily here, which is fine. It keeps the audience on edge. And I think it worked for the shock value in the early seasons to get people bought into it. I'm just saying, like, now it's expected. It doesn't have the shock value anymore because we know this is the world. And so, again, it doesn't have, again, that hook that might have worked in other shows.
I think, too, that when you make a series where the vast majority of the people that do exist when they're kind of like morally repugnant, right? When you do that, it can be interesting. It can be unique. And that could have been what maybe drew so many people to Game of Thrones. But I also feel like in the time since Game of Thrones first premiered, we've kind of been flooded with those types of stories, whether it's deconstruction, whether it's more relativism, like things like that. Across all different genres. And I feel like people are a little more turning towards, we want more kind of basic, like traditional storytelling now, because we've got so much of that over the past 15 years.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's one of the reasons. But I also think Game of Thrones was incredibly unique and did capture people in a way that I don't know if anything ever will be quite like that ever again. And it is also unique because the further along it went, the worse it got and the more people were watching.
True.
Like, like season 6, 7, and 8 progressively got worse and worse and worse. And the number of people watching just went up and up and up.
The ratings were.
I think that's why season 8 fell off a cliff so hard with a lot of people, was that experience with Ned got carried through to Robb. Like, we all wanted Robb to get some kind of justice over it. He dies, and then it carries through like Arya and Jon. We're like waiting for them to sort of be able to bring it back. Then you get like Battle of the Bastards, which is a bit wonky. You get the Freys all dying from poisoned stew or whatever, and getting, Arya killing them all. And then the awkward thing of Arya kill stealing the Night King, and then Bran being on the throne. Like, it never quite made it there. They haven't quite got that satisfaction, and I think that plays into with all the rest of how disappointing it all was. The people hanging on to that story, getting that catharsis we were all waiting for in terms of a full story, even across 8 seasons, both thematically and with all these journeys that relate to like these different houses and what they deserve. With House of the Dragon, as most people point out, everyone's just going to die.
Yes. Like this is literally This is the explanation as to why there are no more dragons in the world of Westeros.
Yeah.
It's this interaction right here. So
I thought
the
the reason was like they gradually kind of dwindled in like size and power till eventually they just died out almost.
Well, the reason they went from so many fucking dragons to basically none, like, or only like super small ones, was because pretty much all the ones that were big died in these upcoming stories.
Yeah.
Oh well.
When dragon starts fighting dragon, it's an easy way to start getting rid of them.
Everyone suffers.
The sense that they certainly toward the later stages of Game of Thrones and a lot of the shows that have come out since trying to emulate it, it's all become a little bit algorithmic. Like they think, well, killing off main characters is shocking and that's what makes it good, so we'll just do that. The idea that good can never win is bold and daring and subversive. So like we'll vaguely do that, but the thing that's missing is that in order for that thing to be shocking anyway, you do have to have some conception of what a good character is. You do have to write a good character that people can invest in order that the emotional impact of them dying suddenly really pays off. Early seasons of Game of Thrones succeeded in doing that. Later seasons of Game of Thrones did not succeed in doing that and in fact sacrificed most of their characters before it got around to killing them. And House of the Dragon is not really replicating it, I don't think, very well. It's not really giving us someone to root for. As has been mentioned, everyone is going to die, but everyone probably deserves to. So when they do die, I'm concerned that it's going to be, well, yeah, okay, that was politically interesting, but not very investing.
There is something to that. Like my reaction to certain characters dying will be like, no, I like them, as opposed to shock and horror. You know?
Yeah.
Which is a key difference. Someone could be like, well, you're still invested, right? And I'm like, yeah, I want to see how it all turns out. It's just this isn't the same experience I had when watching the Red Wedding or when Ned gets executed. Those were big moments of just staring at the screen, watching things unfold. Same for Oberyn the Mountain, or several moments throughout Game of Thrones' best bits. And it does feel like House of the Dragon might not have the tools to be able to reach those highs. But I really think this next episode will help me figure out what we're dealing with. In terms of not just like how high they can reach payoffs potentially, but that episode 8 was special. Like I don't want to take that away from season 1. It really was. Some people say it's like their favorite payoff in all of A Song of Ice and Fire after having seen that. And it's like I can understand that. There's so much to talk about how well executed it was, but he's gone now, that character. So, and it's.
I think we're gonna get a Viserys cameo in a Daemon like dream/nightmare.
Really?
I fucking hope so.
I think one,
but even
not just because it'd be cool, but because Daemon has so much unresolved shit about Viserys that I feel like if they're going to do this and he's going to be having these haunting nightmares or whatever they are, these visions, I feel like it would make a lot of sense for him to have that interaction.
True.
Yeah. But then he's not going to be a presence in the show.
Correct.
He's the best you're going to get out of him is a little cameo like that. Yeah. Excuse me as well while I choke to death because I seem to have swallowed that Coke the wrong way. Excuse me. I was going to ask as well, like, we've also got Gladiator 2, which is on the way, apparently. And, like, if you're not excited about this movie already, you will be when I show you who's in it.
Drinker, I'm excited. Pedro Pascal. He's not casting. He's not been casting anything the past 4 years.
It's everyone's favorite generic everyman who's in literally everything. But
the frustrating thing is I actually like Pedro Pascal in most everything he's in. Maybe the exception. Well, I don't even fucking count Mandalorian because it's like nobody's a real person in the Star Wars galaxy. They all talk
he's
like they're
barely acting
robots.
in that.
He's phoning it in completely. I didn't like him in Wonder Woman 1984. I don't know how much that was his fault or not. But for instance, I just got done rewatching Narcos, and he's fucking great in that.
He's great in Narcos.
He's good in that, yeah. He's good.
What was that Netflix movie? Triple Frontier, Ben Affleck, Charlie Hunnam. Like, he's fucking great in that shit.
He's great as Pedro.
Yes, he's great as Oberyn. I like him in a lot of fucking things. It's frustrating because I hate him as a human being. But I don't know what to think about Gladiator 2. I just
think it's funny.
I don't know. That first one's so fucking incredible. I don't think they're going to be able to recapture that.
I feel like it's just going to be a Prometheus all over again, like a really old Ridley Scott directing a movie that he shouldn't be making. Just leave it alone.
Well,
Please, Ridley.
Can it be worse than the original one where Maximus went to the afterlife and was fighting gladiators? And
What do you mean? That sounds
hell?
amazing. Let's make that right now.
Yeah,
I think
right.
I just love the fact that Russell Crowe gets so mad when people ask him about it, like journalists and stuff. He's like, "Stop asking me about this fucking movie. I'm not even in it. I'm dead. Just leave me alone about this stuff."
Just DH Russell Crowe, you know?
Yeah, I've got the same kind of opinion as you, Ryan, in that I recognize that Pedro Pascal is a pretty good actor and he can be hugely entertaining in the right roles. Not always like particularly well cast in everything.
I think Mr. Fantastic is a miscast, but yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, well, it's another example of how they're just trying to put him in fucking everything, and it's annoying. Like it almost feels like he's eating up roles that should be taken by other people. Like it's all just getting pulled into this Pedro Pascal singularity of like him just being everyone.
I guess
Like,
you
you
can't
don't
knock
have
his
to take
agent because this is going to pay well, you know.
It's the Pedro Pascal cinematic universe now. Just what it is.
Yeah, it's just you don't have to take every project that comes across your desk. You know, like you can afford now at this point in your career to be a bit more selective. And don't get me wrong, like I'm sure working with Ridley Scott and being in the sequel to Gladiator is a hell of an opportunity. I just don't know if it's going to pay off in this case.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be saying that after the film's out. I can't see it. Isn't the budget something like $310 million? It's a huge budget for an unlooked for sequel for a director who's pretty much lost it. I can't see this doing anything except bad numbers.
I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen with this shit. It's such a baffling choice. I don't know.
Denzel's in it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. It's out. Is it the end of this year? This is out.
I'll follow right now.
I think so.
I think yeah, because if we're at a point where they're releasing production stills, I think we're getting close. I want to see a trailer at least.
This is one of about. There's like a group of 10 movies or so where I even if I see them, I can't believe they exist. Just like, how did this happen? Why did this happen?
Yeah, why was
it a joke? It's a parody. Like, how could this be real? The one that always gets brought up is Twisters, the sequel to Twisters. Like, what?
That's
what
coming out in a week or two, isn't it?
It's like the revenge of the Twister.
There's two of them now, though. You see,
and that's hundreds of billions of dollars in budget as well. Like once upon a time, if you were looking through like Amazon and you might see Titanic 4: Revenge of the Iceberg or something, it's like that's a B movie that cost about $10 to make. It's not an actual Hollywood thing that's now $100 million, $200, $300 million. What is going on?
You need that scene of the iceberg slowly sinking and his kids are in the background crying and one of them vows revenge. He's got a knife.
Or like the ship like swerves to avoid the iceberg and then they look over their shoulder and it's fucking chasing them like, and behind them like, oh shit.
The fourth iteration of the Titanic has like a huge minigun on the front to kill icebergs, but this iceberg's ready. He knows what's up. He's gonna jump from the top of them.
It begins with they're all sailing in the Caribbean, and then up comes the iceberg in like fucking summer temperatures. It's come all the way down to kill them all. Well, it's basically Jaws 4.
Okay, we're dangerously close to actually making this a fun movie where there's a bunch of ice ninjas. They're all ice blocks, but with like ice knives, and they jump on through like get onto the ship, and they all like assassinate the captain and several other people, and there's like a huge fight, Pirates of the Caribbean style.
We need like an environmental message there as well. So like because of global warming, like the icebergs are migrating to like different parts of the ocean and attacking ships. Like it's the revenge of Mother Nature.
You could make Titanic a prequel to Waterworld, that because of the danger of icebergs, humans decided we need to change the global temperature. Polar ice caps melt, world is covered, the mariner is born.
Yeah, like they declare war on icebergs and melt them all, and like it raises the sea level. Like, oh no, what have we done? We never could have foreseen this.
Either that or it's an alternative to like War of the Worlds, where suddenly the virus kills everyone. It's like suddenly the iceberg that's about to win just melts, and everyone says, "Yay, global warming!"
Yeah, because at the end, the captain's with like some main character who's just generic American. It's Pedro Pascal, of course, with a gun or something, and they're just commenting on how they've done it. And they look to the screen, they're like, "Ice is bad," and then they look at it and go, "Good, actually." No, wait, like which one is it? Do we want the ice or do we not? Bad ice is bad.
We have to melt the ice caps before it's too late.
We gotta kill ice.
Yeah. I'm looking up now. The initial budget for Gladiator 2 was 165 million, and like Platoon said, now it's at 310 million dollars.
So it's doubled essentially, doubled their
How,
budget.
how do you go from 165 to 310 million dollars for a budget?
If I was the studio executives right now, I would
Oh
be
my God.
shitting myself in terror because
Oh
this
my-
movie ain't going to do original Gladiator numbers.
Do you remember when Marvel told us that the reported budget for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was $200 million? And then the tax documents revealed it actually cost $450 million.
Christ.
But with the UK tax break, that knocked it all the way down to about $375 million.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. What is Captain America 4 going to cost then?
Oh,
Around
like,
375.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're reporting that already, but who knows what the final numbers will be.
And we won't get like UK tax documents for that either.
We
So
entered
they're
like
probably going
another.
to hide that.
Because you got the Dead Reckoning 2 as well. Are they all competing to just get the record? What's going on?
At least Dead Reckoning Part 2 has an excuse because they're like using
I
an
agree.
actual fucking submarine to do something and it keeps breaking on them, costing them like
What do you-
tens of
what do you
millions
mean?
of dollars.
Captain America 4 totally has an excuse. It's an awful film. They have to
Yeah,
keep
yeah, yeah.
refilming it
No
until
more.
they get a good one.
No
Well,
more.
that's I like our idea of just releasing all the different versions of the movie at
Fuck
various
yeah.
times. Like,
Well, I'll say them all because
Why not?
now they have Giancarlo Esposito now in Captain America. That's their budget.
It would be funny if they release all the versions and each one comes with like this one's got Wolverine, this one's got Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, this one has 10 Hulks in it. Just see which one works. May as well.
Sure.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. Like, you might be following this, but Inside Out 2 is made over $1 billion at this point. So it's
Smash
like the
it, yeah.
big success story of the year, and nobody seems to be fucking talking about it. It's like no one cares. It's
Well,
weird.
I mean, I would also say that in our space, like it's not necessarily going to be a super talked about thing, unless it involves like Disney failing in some way. Just being honest, right? If there's a massive Disney flop or something,
Yeah.
it'll probably get some discussion. But like the movie itself, it's not really made for us. You know what I mean? But it has been a massive success, and from the people that have seen it that I've talked to, they say, hey, it's not necessarily like the best movie ever made, but it's kind of back to just normal Pixar. No like identity politics at play, just an entertaining movie for kids. And that's how easy it is. If Disney would just get back to that, that's how easy it is for them to make money. Because this is going to go down as one of the biggest animated movies in history.
Ryan's right. I mean, I saw it, and it's a very bare bones plot, but that's the point. It's a bare bones plot, but it's old school Pixar. That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, old school Pixar is like a gigantic leap forward from what we have at the
Yeah.
moment. So
There's nothing groundbreaking about Inside Out 2, but they're not checking diversity boxes. That's why it's blowing up the box office for. Families want to take their kids to see old school, just simplistic storylines.
The thing that I think is funniest is that Disney, for the past 5 years, where all their animated movies have been flopping at the box office time after time, their excuse has never been, well, we're making dog shit. Well, this sucks. Well, this isn't good. Their excuse has been, well, families don't want to go to the theaters anymore. They've changed their viewing habits. They don't want to take their families out to the theaters. They want to stay home because they know it's going to come on Disney Plus sooner rather than later. All of this while Super Mario Brothers makes $1 billion, while Minions 3 makes almost $1 billion. Like all these successes out there. I don't hear the same excuses from Disney now that they made a movie that's not fucking dog shit and people are flocking to the theaters to go see it.
Dude, you're right.
How about we do a few super chats before we finish up this evening, gentlemen? How does that sound?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Alrighty. Deval says, MauLer, please do a pitch to the panel for your own nonsensical Star Wars show as Palpatine.
So I've got to be Palpatine and pitch a show that's nonsense.
I think so, yeah. I mean, that's a bit of a tall order, but I'm just reading it out.
Just do the pitch for the Acolyte.
I was
Yeah.
going to be the fucking joke. I was just going to start. There are twins. It's going to be incredible. Fucking, I don't know. A nonsense plot line. All right, so it's Jar Jar Binks. He has to make his way back home in order to get back his honor, and he comes across fucking the Basil guy.
I love how you sound like Prince Charles. He encounters some bloody peasants along the way and has to shoot them like I do.
And then he becomes Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. That's it. That's the season finale. So yeah,
Sounds good to me. I'm
He does
great.
that voice very well.
yeah. It wasn't even me. I was just channeling the spirit.
He also asks us, music and soundtrack can definitely make a film or show better. Which movies outside of Lord of the Rings, in your opinion, really stands out and you can think of, a bad or average film show that the score makes you go, wow. So essentially, can we think of any examples of maybe an average movie that's elevated by a really great score?
Recently, Drinker, for the 35th anniversary was Batman '89. That soundtrack is fantastic.
It's
funny because one of the things that came to my mind was actually the Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman movie, and how that score is fucking phenomenal, and like evokes so much like power and danger and kind of scariness all at the same
I'm
time.
going to bring up Dark Knight Rises.
We're all talking about Batman. There we go.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think that might have been my pick. But yeah, generally speaking, I don't know. Great scores and great movies tend to go hand in hand. So it's tough for me to pick out ones that are like a mediocre film, but a great soundtrack, Toxic Monger of the Hateful Broods. Oh, no, sorry. I've read that one already just earlier. BlueCollarLoser. This guy sounds familiar.
He sounds-
It says, Drinker, you suave, succulent, salacious, sarcastic, saintly, sincere, sensational, saintly, savage of all things Star Wars. Happy 4th to you, Silky Sith. I did it. Managed to say it all.
Dave Filoni with his list would have a tough time getting through that.
Yeah.
I didn't think you'd actually read it.
I keep thinking of that fucking Padawan from episode 6 of Acolyte. Good Lord.
Oh, the soy guy?
Yeah, the soy boy. I don't say that lightly, but in this case, I can't think of a more apt description for that dude. He is pure
His
soy.
name is Mog. You have to say his name.
I was killing Theo. Just in our recording, he was just like under his breath giggling the whole time, thinking about his name being Mog. It's such a shit name.
I might just have to run with it
added
because I've
an N
had
in there.
such trouble coming up with a funny name for him because there are so many candidates, but Mog actually might just be the best one.
Sure.
Digby Strawbridge joined the Fellowship of the Drink, so welcome on board. Land Far Away says, Gentlemen, I learned that I will be having a daughter. I don't drink myself, so please raise your glasses and celebrate in my name. To Wanda. Nice one, man. Cheers to you and cheers to your daughter.
Cheers.
Congratulations. Taker610 says, Drunk 3PO called Basil a pronoun beaver and I died. I mean, I think that's probably a good way of putting it. So yeah, pronoun beaver. Sith Cake says, Happy 4th of July and to you. He also says, anyone know what Zach's deal is lately, talking about the anti-woke YouTubers, who they are, and semi-defending DSW?
What?
I think they're talking about Comics Matter with your boy Zach. Apparently, doesn't like that so many people are talking bad about Disney Star Wars. That's all I really know about that. So,
yeah, I'm not close enough to it to know what he's been saying. So, yeah, sorry. Jimmy Dante says, MauLer, loved your unbridled praise for Infinity War. Cheers and thanks. Also, which is worse, The Dark Knight Rises or Avengers Endgame?
Avengers Endgame. It's not even close.
Okay.
Endgame is a fucking disaster. This is the thing. It goes way further than The Dark Knight Rises because where that one has like difficulties with how a lot of things can work out. There's some stuff in there that's actually kind of cool and interesting, and some stuff that you're almost mad at the movie because like, oh, you built
could have
this,
been
and then
so good.
yeah. But
Endgame ruins. Endgame really undoes like 8 to 10 years of storytelling in some ways. So there's like more at stake for Endgame than there is with the last movie in a trilogy.
I mean, for you, like, did you reach that conclusion as soon as you watched it, or
No.
like at the time were you just very enraptured by the spectacle of it?
The EVAP we did the following day, we ended on like, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 out of 10 for like writing, but these days we were at like a 1. It's the more time went on, the more we found was like, oh, that doesn't make any fucking sense now. You know, the thing that struck everybody at first, I think, was all right, Iron Man was solid. Cap is like iffy. Hulk not good.
Oh, God.
Thor
Yeah.
not good. But then like as time went on, it was even stuff to do with Iron Man started to get like awkward. As much as you have the Iron Man snap, it's like that's good. But then you have questions all over the place about who could have saved him or why did we end up in that position. And then stuff as simple as why did you have Captain Marvel be the one to save Tony when it could easily have been Thor? Why did you have the conflict that went all the way back to Civil War get resolved almost instantly because they had plot to do? It's like, that's a complete waste. Why did you have... When Captain Marvel just bursts into the scene and destroys Thanos' ship, she has no idea what's going on, and then she almost single-handedly defeats him. These decisions, like, the more time went on, I was like, oh, but let's not get into the time travel mechanics. All of the choices they made regarding the collection of the stones was beyond bullshit retarded. They were all of them become retards in that storyline in order to make it happen. But there's moments of stuff that's like, oh, well, that was good-ish.
Yeah, it's like, it's weird because like in the moment watching it as it happened, you're feeling, like I said, it's like a decade's worth of story that you've been very invested in, and it's all coming to an end in a big spectacle way. And there were some rewarding moments seeing Captain America with Thor's hammer, like of hearing the phrase Avengers Assemble, the fact that they held off from using that until the very fucking end of that movie, like there are some powerful moments.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when I was driving home from the theater, I was very like tons of emotions going through as you're watching. But when I was doing the 30-minute drive home from the theater, I was like talking myself down on the movie. Like, well, that kind of didn't make any sense. Would Captain America really... I mean, I know those are some nice tits, but would Captain America really go back in time and sit on the sidelines as he watches all these horrific events play out in the world?
For Haley Atwell, I fucking would.
Exactly, but Steve Rogers wouldn't. Right?
Yeah,
Even if
that's
all of
why
us
he's a
would.
hero and I'm a drunken, cynical asshole.
You're a weak man drinker.
And it's like, and even though like, and Tony, would we really set this entire thing up to have this 5-year gap, knowing how much it's going to fuck up so many people's lives? Just so Tony can have the thing that he wants. There's so many decisions that I just don't think played out very well.
Yeah, the Steve Rogers stuff aged really badly, and then people started thinking, wow, they punished Thor from us, like, completely, and they ruined him, made him play Fortnite.
They made him a fucking clown in that movie. That was the first sign of like, oh, right, they've
yeah, because Infinity War gives us what might be the best Thor of all of the MCU, and it was surprising.
True.
He's so
very
angry
driven,
and destroyed, yeah.
Yeah, like that was a good, intense kind of Thor. I wanted more of that guy.
Did you see Chris Hemsworth was like retweeting the clip of him arriving in Wakanda, and it's just like everyone agrees that is peak Thor, and we wanted so much more from that.
I agree.
Well, I think he was interviewed recently about whether you do another Thor movie, and he's like, yeah, but it would have to be something radically different from like what I've done recently, because otherwise I'd lose my mind.
He's been super critical of Love and Thunder, like publicly.
Yeah, it's like he's doing it as much as he can, basically saying, I fucking hate what Taika Waititi's done to this character, turned him into a goofy clown. And I agree with him.
Yeah, well, Taika did what he promised.
Yeah,
I'll ruin your mythos in a minute, baby.
It's interesting what you mentioned as well, like that drive home. The drive home is always the benchmark for whether a movie works or not. And it's like, especially if it's you and a bunch of your friends, because that's when you start talking about it and being like, oh, I like that. Oh, so did I. Yeah. But, it was weird. This thing didn't make much sense to me. And, X, Y, and Z didn't make sense. And it's how long that conversation goes on for that defines whether or not the movie works. And like, I remember with TLJ, that conversation never ended on the drive home. Like our drive home was like a good 30, 40 minutes. And it was just constant. Like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense either. And it just kept going, like snowballing and compounding. It was, it was worrying at the time.
I heard in an interview that Russo brothers said that they didn't write in Thanos headbutting Captain Marvel. That was studio interference because he headbutts her. He does 0 damage to her, just to enforce how Captain Marvel is the strongest Avenger.
Yeah, that's like when MauLer questions that I'm just like, dude, that whole sequence was purely
and even the Power Stone, he knocks her back. He never actually hurts her. All he does, he just knocks her away.
It's the only time I've told this story a couple of times. The only time I've experienced that feeling in just watching a story unfold where I have tension and fear for a character that I'm not supposed to be experiencing it for whatsoever. Like, I was genuinely worried for Thanos because of what it will mean for him if he can't escape this insane monster. I was like, please don't let this happen. The whole story's relying on, like, we need to get the actual heroes in here. We can't have Captain Marvel just kill him, please, for the love of God. And when he hits her, he looks like afraid of her. And I was like, fuck, no. And then he grabs the Power Stone and boops her. And I was like, oh, thank God.
I was triggered that he needed the Power Stone. Like, that pissed me the fuck off.
I was just relieved she didn't fucking beat him right there.
I was
like Yord.
Yeah.
I was in New York City in Alamo Draft House, and the entire sold out theater started clapping their ass off when he knocked her away. I'm like, that's bad. Everyone's just like,
imagine that, like literally clapping for the bad guy.
Hand to God, man, my entire fucking sold out theater was clapping her ass off, like, yes, he knocked away Captain Marvel. Like, wait, he's the bad guy. Like,
this is absolutely a know your place sort of moment. Get out of the movie. You don't belong here. We'll happily try to build. If it's not what happened, but we'll happily try and build you up as an interesting character later. You are not welcome in this fight. Okay, it's so boring that if she had turned up to begin with, she would have flattened the entire army instantly. It's just like, well, that's fun. Thanks, I guess.
I love the Incredible Hulk, and boy, what they did to the Hulk in that movie.
Yeah, honestly, we could go on for hours about that film.
Yeah.
Confucius says, now, I was told that Slave One is a very offensive name for a ship, but here we have a white woman wearing green face and wielding a futuristic whip. Well, yeah, it's not a great look, but I don't know, maybe Leslie Headland's into that sort of thing, and she wanted to have her wife wielding the whip. Jonathan Showalter says, Drinker, you should look up Metal Gear Solid 2 Devil May Cry Remix on YouTube and give it a listen. I originally got it from LimeWire. Christ, it must be old then. And I had it on repeat on Halo 2 campaign run. It's my most vivid, nostalgic memory. Well, there we go. Merging two things together that I never expected. Devil May Cry and Metal Gear Solid. Big Dave K says, hey, Drinker, when are you all going to celebrate Scotland Day? You all need a proper Scotland Day, damn it. Well, yeah, but then you celebrate things that your country won at, and Scotland never wins at anything. So I'm kind of blanking, really. We have like the Battle of Bannockburn Day, whenever that
there
was.
You go.
We won it there. So that was nice. I mean, it was like almost 1,000 years ago, but we like to treasure our victories here.
Gotta remember the classics,
Yeah, exactly.
That's a thing.
Yeah. Snacks says, happy 4th, open bar. Don't worry, only tea is dumped in the harbour, not the booze. Good. Question for the whole panel. What's your favourite Independence Day film? Mine is The Patriot. Cheers to freedom.
Yeah, The Patriot's fucking awesome.
I mean, I kind of love The Patriot. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as overblown ending go, it doesn't get much better than running someone through with the stars and stripes.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going ID4 because Bill Pullman's speech to this day still resonates, man.
That movie, I think that's probably my pick, actually.
Yeah.
It's so cheap, but so emotive and so effective, and I don't care if it's cheesy. It's amazing.
Welcome to Earth before Will Smith,
Yeah.
Slapping people.
Before he Chris Rocks that alien.
Yeah.
I hate you more.
Keep my wife's name out of your alien mouth.
I liked in Bad Boys 4, they actually had a scene where Will Smith gets slapped.
Dude, not just once, like repeatedly.
He hit him repeatedly,
very intentionally, obviously.
I'm glad Drinker called that in his video. Martin Lawrence was slapping the shit out of him.
Yeah. I mean, it's good that they can laugh at themselves a little bit. MLK Ultra says, a streamer is never late. He goes live precisely when he means to. We did indeed with this one. Yeah. We're only like 2 minutes late. It's okay. Larry Escher says, on the latest episode of The Acolyte, as the Jedi walk away from the bodies, you can hear them ADR the line, we'll prepare the bodies for burial. This means they originally were going to just leave them lying there until they decided to fix it in post. Man, this show is shit. Yeah, imagine that. Like
someone noticed and they had to put a light in. I noticed that when we watched it as well because the light is off and you can't see us saying it. It's like, we should give a shit about the bodies.
It's bad enough that Saul walked away and left them, but like the idea that she would have done as well, like Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Just a matter of time till the animals get to them. Mo Zislak says, hi, Drinker, penis. That's all. Nah, I see what you did there. Yeah. Sorry, we spent a lot of time talking about cocks on this one. So
Oh, yeah.
Wiener.
Jordan Pendragon. To everyone tuning in and listening from the UK, I hope you all had a lovely day at work today. #Murica. I mean, yeah. We don't do much work here on Open Bar, so we were okay. Joseph Pickett, give us $1. Grandmaster Chris says, Happy Independence Day to all my fellow ungrateful colonials. Drinker, as a Scottish man, I'm sure you can understand why we had to leave those bloody English. Anyway, Disney Star Wars isn't canon. Agree on all those different fronts. So thank you. Black Cane, happy 4th, you lobster backs. Have any of you seen Turn? What's this? Turn Washington Spies. MauLer, you would like the Welsh representation. Okay. No, I haven't seen it, I'm afraid. Jacob Joseph just came in here to say, lesbian headlamp, Harvey Weinstein's personal assistant. Well, we needed to be reminded, I guess. Lance says, what the fuck is a kilometer? Yeah, we've seen the meme.
Yeah.
That George Washington driving a tank, which I just approve of. Avarith says, the showrunners write like Gromit lays tracks. Yeah, right in front of you. Crew Kid, I didn't think it could get any more cringe, but here we are. But beyond that, the worst part of all is, good grief, he's naked. Yep. The Royal Wee says, what the fuck is a kilometer? Is this just a recent thing? Is this just
I've heard it the past couple of years. I've heard it a little bit, but it seems to be excessive this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and your fucking imperial measurements. Butter says New York abstained because they had not received a decision by the delegation yet. So that's why they didn't sign the Declaration of Independence, I guess. Graph Webb says, for fuck's sake, # cancel Disney Plus. I mean, if you want to do it, go for it. Rob Cortez says, England blew a 13-colony lead. Murica.
That's true. The original choke artists right there.
Yeah. Literally, if they'd just given them some MPs in Parliament, we'd probably still be running things over there by now. Dicks. Yeah. Anyway, Jesus de Villa says, gifted a Critical Drinker membership. So thank you. Darkus Aurelia says, Drinker and MauLer, did you vote Tory or Labour? What makes you think I even voted? What's the point? I can't be arsed with that. I had more important things to do, like, watching all those dicks on House of the Dragon.
Yeah, I was catching up on Star Wars trivia, my dude. Did you know that Jar Jar Binks was sentenced to a quarry penal colony, but he was the sentence was commuted because he
wasn't mentally fit.
He saved Boss Nass from drowning.
Okay.
You almost made me so happy with that news. I was imagining Jar Jar working in some North Korean slave camp, and then you told me it was commuted.
He just happened to save Boss Nass from drowning,
The idea of a Gungan drowning in general.
Doesn't Boss Nass live underwater?
Are they frogs?
He does, but he's in a big air bubble and he's fat now.
Exactly.
Christ.
Jesus de Villa gave us a beer symbol, so thank you. Stormbringer gifted 5 Critical Drinker memberships. Nice one, mates. And Metal Face Rosie says, R.I.P. Martin Mull. He's mostly known for his TV and movie roles, but his music and stand-up was legendary. Did he just pass away today then, I guess? Either way, R.I.P. Cuban says, MauLer, are you excited for the Bounty Hunter remaster coming out next month?
As long as I don't fuck anything up, if they just make it the exact same but it looks better, then sure, I'll happily give that a play. But it's Aspire, right? So people have their concerns after how they've handled some of the others, not perfectly, But yeah, I'll check it out.
And he also says, Drinker, make MauLer play the Resident Evil remaster and then the PS1 director's cut with the really shitty music in the underground sections. Yeah, you must have played the remastered version of Resident Evil, surely.
Yeah, it was on GameCube, right?
Yeah.
I played that, yeah.
Oh, okay, you're fine then. Yeah, so, well, mission accomplished on that one. You're
nice
welcome.
one, Drinker. You did it.
Yeah, easily done. But I think I'll probably finish up there for this evening because we've done quite a few of the super chats, as we always do. We will cover the remaining ones on our last order stream over the weekends, so nobody will be missed out. But panel, everyone who's joined us tonight, thank you very much for this. You guys from the other side of the pond, go and celebrate Independence Day and get extremely drunk because you've got 64 million cases of beer to get through apparently
more
by
than
the end of the day. So yeah, I reckon you guys can do it.
Yep, me and Ryan.
And you have 33 kilotons of fireworks that you have to set off. So
I think it would just be way easier to drop 2 nuclear bombs, personally. Sorry, atomic bombs.
But slightly messier, perhaps, but bigger,
Depends where
more
you drop them.
crowd-pleasing explosions. Yeah,
He's in Texas. I'm so jealous of him. I hate New York.
Yeah, I don't know how much beer I'm going to drink, but I'm definitely going to drink something. Maybe we'll do some whiskey.
just Ryan, just pretend it's a fan meetup. You'll be completely on the floor by like the end of the night.
Well, that's the thing. I've got to. Well, I guess I have so much alcohol it doesn't fucking matter in my house. But yeah, I have to buy my drinks then. When everybody else is just handing me them, it's impossible to say no.
That's true. Yeah,
it's impossible to
rude.
resist.
Yeah,
it would be
anyway
because of the implication.
Yeah, we got a reputation to uphold. But everyone who's joined us tonight, thank you. And that is all we've got for today. So go away now.
Bye.